Hogwarts, the Book of Laws. What is darkness? What is light? When you do something that is not in the public interest, you are darkness. When you do something that is in their interest, you are light. Ryan held his head with his hands. He said with interest, but only the weak need to live in groups. Tigers always live alone. Chapter 1. Clear Street has been a famous poor area in London, England since the 19th century. Poverty forced people to change, so darkness began to breed here, various black industries settled here, and a black mist seemed to envelope the entire Clear Street. If we were to say what was the strangest thing about the small townsfolk of Clear Street today in 1987, it was the homeless boy on Clear Street. The homeless boy they call is Ryan Zell, a 7-year-old boy. 2 days ago, Ryan stole a piece of bread from the Charlie gang and was beaten to death. Just 2 days later, this kid visited the Charlie gang's kitchen again. This made Charlie, the leader of the Charlie gang, very angry. After all, this kid had repeatedly challenged the majesty of the Charlie gang. This is the poorest, darkest place in London, and rude people who can't read can't think. If the Charlie gang does not deal with this kid, then all they will see is that the Charlie gang is visited twice in a row by a 7-year-old child without doing anything. This was a serious blow to the prestige of the Charlie gang. So after Ryan was caught, Charlie took him to the high platform square on Clear Street for execution. He needs blood and life to establish his position and power. Boy, after eating so much of Charlie's gang, let's play a game. Isn't that too much? As long as you win, you will get a room that is enough to accommodate you. Charlie touched his shiny scalp. He grinned fiercely and said, "Of course, if you lose, then you have nothing, ha ha ha. So, is this game fun?" Of course, young Ryan was unwilling. The steel pipe in the hand of the big man next to him exuded a strong fishy smell, and the dried blood spots told the horror of this weapon and the sin of the big man. He wanted to escape, but 2 tall men sandwiched him between them, giving him no chance to escape. Then, now I will announce the rules of the game. Charlie stood up straight, and the fat on his body trembled with his movements. The game is very simple. All we need is our little warrior, Ryan Zell. Following Charlie's words, the 2 big men lifted Ryan high. Ryan looked at the people below. They included an old man with a haggard face, holding a bamboo pole, a shivering child hiding in his mother's arms, and nobles in gorgeous clothes. Ryan seemed to have accepted his fate without any resistance. As long as this little warrior survives 10 rounds under our other warrior, Tom, then he will win. The vicious man named Tom took a step forward, and the people below followed him. He took a step back in a neat step. Seeing everyone's reaction, Tom was very happy and opened his mouth to reveal an ugly smile. This made everyone in the audience even more frightened. The children even buried their heads in their mother's arms. These are Clear Street residents who are exploited by gangs and sometimes wake up in the morning to find their neighbors dead in their homes. Then, the game begins. Following Charlie's order, the 2 big men holding Ryan threw Ryan towards Tom, and then ran behind their boss as if they were escaping. Tom is a lunatic. He doesn't care whether you are one of his own. Only Charlie can control that. Bang! The sound of the metal pipe hitting the human body was heard in everyone's ears, and the children in the audience were covered by their parents. Although they will have to be exposed to these things in the future, parents still want to expose their children to these things as late as possible. Although their children sometimes come home and ask why their little friends haven't shown up for several days. Charlie was so happy when he saw Ryan lying on the stage twitching continuously and the reaction of the audience below the stage, he burst out laughing. Tom didn't care about this. He picked up the steel pipe and hit Ryan hard, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. After an unknown number of blows, there was a pool of blood under Ryan's body, and there was no hesitation in his body, he was dead. Charlie and Tom, as well as the audience, were sure of this. It seems that it is a pity that our little warrior did not win this game. Charlie's voice lowered, as if he was really sad about Ryan's death, but soon his intentions were revealed. So, you scumbags, don't try to challenge the Charlie gang, otherwise, I want to play a game with you next time. Everyone in the audience began to tremble and kept shouting Charlie gang and Charlie gang number 1. These poor people only know these sentences. They can't think of any more elegant words at all. Even these sentences are handed down from their ancestors. They just change XX gang to Charlie gang. Charlie looked at the reactions of everyone in the audience and listened to the chaotic shouts, his eyes were slightly fascinated, full of enjoyment. Boy, why don't you get up? Ha ha ha. After hearing the cheers of the crowd, Charlie turned his head and yelled at Ryan, who was in a pool of blood, and then led the Charlie gang slowly away from the high platform amidst the cheers of the crowd. Ryan felt that his whole body was in great pain, and waves of coldness hit him, making him unable to open his eyes. Countless sounds poured into his ears, making his brain hurt. He wanted to make some noise, but couldn't open his mouth. He felt that his consciousness was losing bit by bit, and he could clearly know that his life was draining away. Ryan was previously a social worker in his 30s, who was born in a welfare institution. He had never even been in love in his 30s. He does not have a handsome appearance, nor a large net worth, so of course he is not liked by girls. What's more, Ryan has no idea about finding a girlfriend. He only needs to take care of himself when he is alone. Until the day when he was 32 years old, he was hit by a book while watching shooting stars on the rooftop. The Book of All Laws. This is the name of the book, created by a god. Maybe it's for entertainment, or maybe it's to make everyone who gets this book owe him. This book has no restrictions on its use. You can even refuse this opportunity, but to Ryan, it's not a big deal. His life was like a pool of stagnant water, but he also longed for a different life, so he accepted this gift from the gods. Then the world in front of him suddenly burst into a burst of white light, and then he came to this world and turned into Ryan lying in a pool of blood. Drowsiness kept bothering Ryan, which made him anxious. He knew that once he fell asleep, he would sleep forever. Charlie used Ryan's life to show his power, but he had no intention of collecting Ryan's body. This is also a characteristic of Clear Street. Death is a common occurrence. Maybe someone will come and steal Ryan's body soon after Charlie leaves. Either sold to medical schools, eviscerated, or even eaten. This is Clear Street, the largest slum in London and the largest place of darkness. After seeing the people from Charlie's gang leaving, the trembling people in the audience began to disperse, and no one paid attention to Ryan, who was lying in a pool of blood. Perhaps occasionally in the sunshine after lunch, a few old women would talk about Ryan's miserable situation today. This is Clear Street, where people have no sensitivity to blood, are accustomed to death, and are even more indifferent to life, because you can't give your feelings to a fragile glass bottle. Ryan felt that his resistance was getting weaker and weaker, and the sleepiness was getting stronger and stronger. Go to sleep, kid, you must be very sleepy. Come on, don't be afraid, death is just a relief. Ryan, I am your father. Come and reunite our family. Father, ha ha ha, father, it turns out I still have a father. Ryan suddenly felt angry in his heart. In his last life, Ryan witnessed his father stabbing his mother to death after being drunk, and then his father still went out drinking as if nothing had happened. When the police found him, he had fallen asleep in a bush with a bottle of wine in his hand. When the police asked him if he knew that he had killed his wife with his own hands, he responded casually, "It's okay to be dead, as long as you don't disturb me drinking." All this was clearly seen by Ryan outside the interrogation room. In the end, Ryan's father was sentenced to death, and Ryan was sent to an orphanage. A strong desire to survive stimulated Ryan's brain, and suddenly, the book gave off a soft light. Ryan was surprised to find that a force suddenly emerged from his body to repair his body. After a while, he found that he could barely move. After discovering this incident, Ryan decided to move immediately, because he saw a lot of creepy things in Ryan's memory, of course, including extremely hungry people picking up corpses to eat. He reluctantly stood up, crying his clothes a little so that the blood would not reveal his whereabouts, and then endured the pain and walked to the alley next to him. There was an abandoned cellar there that no one had ever discovered. After the original Ryan discovered it, he made it his home. Just 2 or 3 minutes after Ryan stepped into his so-called home, 2 skinny men ran to the high platform. Looking at the high platform with only a pool of blood left, they cursed. After cursing for a while, the men left with their heads hanging. They needed to find something to fill their stomachs. Perhaps Charlie's gang's kitchen is a good choice. There is enough food there for 2 people to have a full meal. As for whether they will be caught, it is not within the scope of the two's consideration. If they don't eat, they will definitely die. If they go, they may not die. And besides, even if he is caught, he will be a dead ghost. The two looked at each other and quickly made up their minds. Chapter 2. Ryan had no way of knowing what happened to those 2 people, and he was currently checking his own condition. There are many bruises and cuts on the body, all of which can be seen. As for the extent of damage to the bones and internal organs, Ryan didn't know. He is not a professional doctor and his medical knowledge is limited to common family illnesses. When you live alone, you have to know something. If you are sick, there is no one to take care of you. Ryan was lying on the bed, wrapping his body tightly with the tattered quilt, shivering from time to time. This is a symptom of excessive blood loss. People will feel a chill and can't help but want to sleep. In fact, this is the body's self-protection. Ryan understood that now was not the time to sleep. He had to deal with his injuries. Otherwise, he didn't have to wait until tomorrow. Whether he could survive tonight was still a question. He concentrated on getting in touch with the book in his mind, regardless of the physical pain it caused. Ryan now understands that the only thing that can save him is the book in his mind, apart from hoping that a kind-hearted person will save him. But in Clear Street, everyone is too busy taking care of themselves to have the energy to take care of others. Just when Ryan thought about the Book of 10,000 Dermas, a stream of heat flowed through Ryan's body, bringing a touch of warmth to him who was cold. At the same time, a message about this book appeared in Ryan's mind. The Book of All Laws can be transformed into any book according to the controller's will, but the next transformation can only be carried out after the controller has read the contents of the book. In other words, if you are too ambitious at the beginning and directly create a book that you can't understand at all, then you have to read the book seriously according to your temper to be considered complete. The Book of 10,000 Dermas can be taken out and read, or it can be read directly in the sea of consciousness. With a strong desire to survive, Ryan began to weave in his mind the conditions that required changing the books. The first thing is to make it simple, preferably something that novices can master. The second is to have an effect on your own injuries at this stage, and finally it is best to use first aid. Ryan couldn't wait 2 or 3 months to master the medical skills. He was seizing the day now. Soon, there were changes in the Book of 10,000 Dermas. 21st century medical mage from beginner to master. Without paying too much attention to the title of the book, Ryan read it directly in his mind. Fortunately, the first chapter introduces a spell called Healing, which says it can cure all physical wounds on the body. Ryan has no time or energy to judge whether the content is correct. All he can do now is believe that this book will not harm him. Following the method in the book, Ryan began to transfer the power within his body. According to the book, it was magic. Through magic, it promotes the rapid division of cells, thereby achieving the effect of replacing old cells with new cells in a short period of time. The advantage of this method is that novices can get started directly without any entry barriers. The disadvantage is also obvious. The number of human cell divisions is limited, which is equivalent to a disguised loss of life. In addition, although the energy for cell division comes from magic power, the required substances still need to be ingested, which requires the patient to consume a large amount of food. Ryan had no food to eat at this time. He was so hungry that he began to chew on the old, moldy straw mat under him. Even so, his originally thin body without much flesh now only had a skeleton and a layer of skin left. If anyone stepped into Ryan's cellar at this time, they would definitely be shocked by this skeleton. Ryan's internal organs and bones were almost repaired. As for the external wounds, they were not fatal, so Ryan did not pay much attention to them. Don't worry about it. Ryan's body has reached its limit. There is only one end if it is repaired any longer, death. Sitting on the bare floor, Ryan took a short rest to regain some strength. He needed to go out and find some food, but he couldn't be seen. The Charlie gang had just executed him this afternoon, and his death was witnessed by countless people. If people knew that he was still alive, he believed that someone would be interested in this ability to bring the dead back to life. By then, although he will have a chance to survive, at least he will not die until all the value in him is drained. But what is also lost is freedom and autonomy. Until then, he is just a white mouse in a cage, and he can be killed whenever others want, he can be experimented with whenever they want. Night fell quietly, and Ryan slowly pushed open the cellar flap. The entrance to this cellar is located in a shadow in the deepest part of the alley. This is a place where sunlight cannot reach, and the entire cellar is filled with humid and turbid air. Ryan stumbled when he came out of the cellar and fell to the ground, making some noise. Ryan ignored the pain in his body and rolled directly to the dark place next to him. He didn't dare to get up in the light for fear of being seen. Clear Street at night is more dangerous than during the day, with all kinds of ferocious beasts and hunters hiding here. A skinny mouse like him is everyone's favorite. He pressed against the wall and moved to the entrance of the alley, then stuck his head out and looked around. Who's there? Haha, I see you, little snack. The moment Ryan poked his head out, a rough and malicious voice sounded, followed by the sound of footsteps. Ryan's heart suddenly trembled, and he suppressed the hunger in his belly and ran into the alley. But he knew that he had to lure people away. This alley was a dead end, and his hiding place was still here, so the risk was too great. However, there were walls more than 2 meters high on both sides of the alley. With Ryan's physical strength at this time, it was impossible to climb over. "You're a little rat in a stinking ditch, you must have been caught by me, ha ha ha." At the entrance of the alley, a huge figure blocked the entry of street light, and the entire alley became dark. Ryan is very anxious now. He knows that the current situation is very dangerous and he must find a way to escape from here. Thanks to the City of London, which never paid attention to Clear Street has become very old and some vines have begun to climb the walls. From the corner of his eye, Ryan saw a withered vine that was almost tall enough for him to climb over the wall. He ran over with all his strength and climbed up, not caring at all even if his palms were pricked by tiny thorns. "Damn it, you bedbug, scum, garbage that has been born and has no one to feed you, come down here." The big man grabbed Ryan's left foot as he was about to climb over the wall. When Ryan lowered his head, he saw a terrifying look in the big man's eyes. Ryan kicked the big man hard in the eye with his right foot. The man felt the pain and let go of his hand holding Ryan's left foot. Ryan used the strength to climb over the wall and then fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was grass growing on the ground and Ryan was not seriously injured. Listening to the curses on the other side of the wall, Ryan quickly fled from this side. Woof woof woof. A loud barking sound sounded, and Ryan cursed quietly, then took off his legs and continued running away. "Scorpius, what's the matter? What are you screaming about at night?" The lights in this house turned on, and a deep male voice sounded. The owner got up after hearing the barking of the dog, and Ryan had to leave quickly. Fortunately, the fence of this family is not high, and the wall of the alley should lead to his backyard. After escaping, Ryan continued to walk in the dark. He wanted to go to Charlie's gang's kitchen to get some more food. Ryan was familiar with the place because Ryan had been there twice. Cleverly avoiding the patrols of Charlie's gang, these all come from Ryan's memory. The Charlie gang is also very caring, and the patrol time and route have not changed. Perhaps because they have held the title of the largest gang in Clear Street for a long time, the Charlie gang is now a little arrogant. We arrived at the kitchen of Charlie's gang with ease. There was a black German Shepherd dog, which was the reason for Ryan's previous 2 failures. Ryan hid in the grass in the dark, quietly watching the dog that was sleeping, thinking about how to pass safely. His body could no longer bear another severe blow. The aroma of food wafting from the kitchen continued to stimulate the secretion of his saliva, and his stomach began to growl. Under the temptation of this aroma, Ryan's brain began to urge Ryan continuously. "Go ahead and die. At least you can have enough to eat now. Smell the aroma, Charlie's gang should be having a barbecue party today. Don't you want to try it?" Ryan forced himself to resist the urge to rush out and waited quietly. Suddenly, the black German Shepherd that Ryan was observing raised its head from its paws and looked around. This made Ryan feel nervous, afraid of being exposed. But he soon discovered that the dog was not staring in his direction. This made Ryan sigh in relief, and then he continued to lurk. After a while, 2 thin figures appeared in Ryan's eyes. They had no idea that there was this dog in the kitchen of Charlie's gang. After they luckily escaped the Charlie gang's patrol, they rushed towards the Charlie gang's kitchen like crazy. Ryan shook his head, secretly thinking that there were 2 more idiots who were blinded by hunger. As Ryan expected, the German Shepherd soon started barking. In the silent night, the barking of the dogs was so obvious that the Charlie gang quickly took action. 30 or 40 rough men were naked, wearing only a pair of underpants, and rushed out with machetes, steel pipes, wooden maces filled with nails, etc. The 2 figures were startled, then they took 2 pieces of barbecue from the kitchen and started running out, not forgetting to take 2 bites of the barbecue in their hands while running. The German Shepherd also chased out, and so did the Charlie gang. "Good chance!" Ryan shouted in his heart, and then Ryan, who could no longer control his eating instinct, rushed to the kitchen. Chapter 3. Ryan, who successfully entered Charlie's kitchen, looked at the basket full of bread and the large pots of barbecue. Without thinking, he jumped directly on the barbecue. Although Ryan understood that suddenly eating something too greasy after being fasted for a long time would cause diarrhea, this was the body's instinctive reaction and was beyond Ryan's control. Ryan crazily stuffed barbecue into his mouth, and he actually stuffed 3 pieces of barbecue into his small mouth. After a few simple chews, Ryan swallowed the roasted meat in his mouth, and then stuffed the roasted meat into his mouth again. Soon, Ryan felt his stomach felt a little full. He stopped eating and glanced at the basket of bread. Ryan walked over, took out half of the bread in the basket, and then put the empty piece on the barbecue. He struggled to pick up the basket, but soon put it down again. Enduring his heartache, he took a few pieces of barbecue from the basket and threw them out to reduce the weight of the basket. The overweight basket was a big challenge for the skinny Ryan. In order to better escape the pursuit of Charlie's gang, Ryan could only reluctantly throw away some food. Everyone in Charlie's gang went to hunt down the 2 men, but they hadn't come back yet. Ryan took this opportunity to sneak out of Charlie's gang. Although he didn't know who those 2 people were, Ryan was still very grateful to these 2 kind people who helped him attract the attention of the Charlie gang. Of course, if Ryan knew that these 2 people wanted to pick up his body to eat in the afternoon, it would be a matter of course whether he would be grateful. After successfully escaping from the Charlie gang's station, Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. At least he didn't have to worry about the Charlie gang's sudden return. However, Ryan did not take it lightly. Clear Street at night was like a dark forest, with countless hunters and ferocious beasts waiting for their prey. Ryan followed the very difficult path in his memory and rushed to his cellar. Along the way, you need to crawl through the grass, pass through thorn bushes full of barbs, and swim through streams. When he was about 500 meters away from his cellar, Ryan entered a dark forest. This is a huge forest that stretches right outside London. In the past, this forest was quiet and peaceful. Until around 1970, this forest changed its appearance. As long as no one enters the forest, no one comes out, so the legend of the forest night devil gradually spreads. It is said that this forest has been designated as its own territory by the forest night devil. As long as someone infringes on its territory, it will be hung up, then eat the internal organs, and will dry the body and keep it for collection. The legend of the forest night devil quickly attracted countless explorers to come here, hoping to unlock the secrets of this forest, but unfortunately, none of them came back alive. However, Ryan didn't find anything dangerous about this forest at all. His entry into this forest was a complete accident. Ryan's parents were natives of Clear Street. During the battle between the Charlie gang and the Clear Street number, Ryan's parents were affected and passed away. Logically speaking, the Charlie gang should have compensated for this after winning the top spot, but the opposite is true. Charlie's gang saw a 5-year-old child and kicked him out of the house. Charlie gave the house to a hero who had repeatedly made military exploits. Even when Charlie's minions saw Ryan, a 5-year-old child, they wanted to capture him and exchange him for some drink money. In desperation, Ryan had no choice but to run into the forbidden forest. Under the pressure of the legend, Charlie and others saw that the little mouse had committed suicide and returned helplessly. They wouldn't risk themselves for a 5-year-old little carrot head. Ryan carried the basket and walked slowly through the forest. At the edge of the forest, Ryan hid behind a tree and looked around. After seeing no one, he walked out with confidence. It was very easy to walk to the alley where he was hiding, and Ryan couldn't help but feel a little good. "Who are you?" Ryan, who was about to reach the cellar door, saw 2 figures standing in the shadows and said in shock. In the silent night, Ryan's scream was very obvious. "Quick, it's right here, this is where the sound came from. Damn, damn, damn. I want all these bastards to die." Charlie's unique voice sounded, and it could be heard from his words that he was extremely angry now. A thief who went to the kitchen to steal food had just been executed in the afternoon, and Charlie thought he could calm everyone down. Unexpectedly, 2 thieves came at night, which made Charlie feel like his face had been severely stepped on. Woof woof woof. There was a sound of barking, followed by the sound of a German shepherd running. "It was this kid who caused us to be discovered. No matter what, kill this kid first so that he will have someone to back him up before he dies." Ahaha, this is a really good idea. The 2 people hiding in the shadows communicated with each other, with no intention of avoiding Ryan. After the conversation, the 2 men showed bloodthirsty eyes and walked slowly towards Ryan. Ryan slowly backed away, until he reached the wall. "Boy, let's die together." A voice like a wild beast roared, and then the man on the left rushed over. Ryan dodged to the right, and the man hit the wall directly, screaming in pain. The man on the right saw his partner being teased and rushed forward in anger. For a time, Ryan's situation was very bad. But soon, a third party joined the battlefield, the German Shepherd. After seeing the German Shepherd, Ryan immediately made a decision, to give up the rations for the next few days. Ryan poured the bread and barbecue in the basket towards the two people, and then hit the man who was about to pounce with the basket. The aroma of barbecue quickly attracted the German Shepherd's attention, and the two men covered in barbecue were the first targets in the German Shepherd's eyes. The German Shepherd rushed forward ferociously, biting a piece of barbecue on the man's body, and by the way bit the meat on the man's body. The thin man raised his fist fiercely and punched the German Shepherd on the waist. "You stupid dog, get away from me!" The German Shepherd was instantly angered. In its eyes, these two people were its enemies competing for food, so it would naturally not show mercy. For a time, the two were fighting fiercely. Ryan took advantage of the fact that both of them were focused on each other and immediately ran deeper into the alley. There was a dead vine that could climb up the wall. He had just climbed it today. Ryan climbed into the yard through the cane and did not take it lightly, because previous experiences told Ryan that there was a vicious dog in the yard. Without staying any longer, Ryan quickly left here. After climbing over the fence, Ryan came to the street as before. But this time there was no such good luck as before. Ryan was discovered as soon as he arrived on the street. "Isn't this the monkey that the boss will judge this afternoon?" said a sharp-eyed minion. "When you put it that way, it's really a bit similar. It's not that he looks like him, but he is exactly that kid." "Ahaha, Tom, you didn't waste too much energy on some girl's belly last night, why didn't you even have a child?" Before the man could finish speaking, Tom hit him on the temple with a stick, and he immediately fell to the ground, not knowing whether he was alive or dead. "Kill, kill, kill, you bug, damn it!" "Ah!" Tom tore his shirt to pieces, revealing his chest covered with black hair, then lifted up his exclusive metal stick and waved it towards Ryan came running over. Ryan ran away as soon as he saw the Charlie gang, but it was in vain. Although the injury in the afternoon was treated, it was only improved. At the same time, Ryan's body was seriously damaged. The barbecue he had just eaten had not had time to digest, and now Ryan was very weak. After running about 500 meters, Ryan began to feel as if his legs were filled with lead and he couldn't lift them up at all. "It felt like a knife was cutting into my lungs, and every breath was filled with pain. No, we can't go on like this, we have to find a way." Ryan listened to the footsteps getting closer and closer behind him and began to consume brain cells crazily. It seemed like the only way to go was there. Ryan gritted his teeth, turned around and ran towards the forest. This turn made the distance between Tom and Ryan even closer, and Ryan could even smell the stench emanating from the metal rod in Tom's hand. When people face life and death crises, their potential is always huge, but they must also have potential. Ryan can't tap into his potential at all now. He could only rely on perseverance. He firmly believed that he could survive as long as he entered the forest. Regardless of whether he can survive entering the forest, he must give himself a firm belief at this time, otherwise he will die here. Faster, faster! Ryan's heart was screaming, and his speed began to slowly increase, and the distance between Tom and him began to slowly widen. This made Tom very angry, and he yelled and increased his speed. But it doesn't matter, Ryan has already seen the edge of the forest, and after entering the forest, he can use the dense trees and bushes to escape. Soon, Ryan fled into the forest, and Tom stopped in front of the forest. He had also heard the rumors about the night devil in the forest. He had also seen it with his own eyes when so many people entered the forest but no one came out alive. He hesitated, wondering whether the little monkey was worth risking his life. But thinking about how his brothers would laugh at him if he went back like this, Tom became full of courage. He yelled and rushed in, but lost track of Ryan. At this time, Ryan took advantage of his height, constantly shuttled through the bushes, and used the bushes to hide his figure. Even if the branches of the bushes made a few cuts on his body, he didn't care. At this time, Ryan only had the desire to live in his heart. Chapter 4. Ryan didn't dare to see if Tom was catching up. He just followed his own feeling and kept running forward. After a while, Ryan was not sure where he ran, which meant that Ryan lost his way in the forest. After seeing that there were no pursuers behind him, Ryan lay on the ground and gasped for air regardless of his appearance. Panting, Ryan burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. The laughter was full of joy of surviving the disaster, startling the unknown bird resting on the tree in the distance. After laughing for a while, Ryan sat up and began to think about being disoriented. Finally, he sighed, supported the tree next to him, and slowly stood up. He didn't feel much during the life and death crisis just now, but now after stopping, Ryan felt a pain like needle pricks in his legs. On top of that, there was a salty taste in his mouth, which was blood. His internal organs were damaged again. The scarred wounds on the outside also opened again due to the bushes, and blood slowly oozed out. Ryan, who was Ryaning on the tree trunk, looked up at the sky. Unfortunately, it was cloudy tonight and he couldn't see anything. After resting for a while, Ryan began to move his painful legs. He had no time to waste here. He needed to find a place to stay before midnight. The forest was so dark at night, and everything around Ryan was pitch black. To be honest, Ryan didn't know if he was walking in a straight line. Ryan couldn't see his feet clearly, and just now, he fell. However, Ryan could only get up by himself. He knew that as long as he fell, the beasts that roamed the night would rush over and tear his body apart. Ah! Ryan tripped again, but this time he fell directly into a tree hole. This is not a natural tree hole, it has obvious traces of artificial excavation. Ryan explored the entire tree hole inside and out, and found that apart from the entrance, there was only one path leading to the ground. Ryan groped his way underground. Even if there was danger, it would be much better than dying in a dream. Slowly, Ryan felt as if he had passed through a layer of cold water, and his eyes suddenly lit up. The sudden bright light made Ryan cover his eyes, and then he quickly threw his body to the side. The attack Ryan imagined did not come. He slowly lowered his hand to let his eyes adjust to the bright light. This was a house built underground, and the walls looked like a single piece of stone, because Ryan didn't find a trace of glue on them. The place where Ryan stood was a hall, with a conference table in the middle. There was a seat inlaid with gemstones on the top of the conference table, and there were fine rosewood chairs on both sides. But the tables and chairs were covered with dust, and it looked like no one had been there for a long time. This room also has 3 doors leading to other rooms, but Ryan hasn't checked them yet. He was now standing in front of the dazzling oil lamp on the wall, observing carefully. Judging from the dust on the tables and chairs, no one has been here for at least 5 or 6 years. But the oil lamp on the wall was still full of oil, which made Ryan feel a little uneasy, wondering if there was anyone here. He turned and looked at the 3 doors, the secret was about to be revealed. These 3 doors were unlocked, and Ryan pushed them open easily. There is a huge desk and chair in the first room. The room is surrounded by bookshelves, and the floor is full of scattered books with strange titles. Decryption of high-end black magic, how to kill a person efficiently, tragic death, pain, this is romance, revealing the mysteries of human body magic and so on. Ryan looked at the titles of the books on the floor and narrowed his eyes slightly. Then the corners of his mouth raised slightly. It seemed that this world was very interesting. Ryan did not act rashly. He walked outside the tree hole and broke off a branch. Then he returned to the room and flipped over one book after another. After seeing that there was no danger again, Ryan packed up the books scattered on the floor, put them back on the bookshelf, and then exited the room. The second room is a bedroom with a small single bed placed in the room. In addition, there is a small desk and several long boxes on the desk. Ryan used branches to slowly open the boxes and found that they were filled with small wooden sticks about 30 to 40 centimeters long. Ryan did not act rashly. After observing for a while, he slowly exited the room and came to the last room. This room was very weird. When Ryan pushed the door in, he found that it was much larger than the other 2 rooms. Perhaps it can be said that it is abnormally large. It seemed to be about the size of 2 or 3 football fields. There was plenty of light in the entire room, and various vegetables and fruits were grown on the ground. These fruits and vegetables look brightly colored and smell fragrant when you get closer. Ryan wasn't very hungry yet, and he easily controlled his desire to eat. After returning to the large conference room, Ryan stood at the door thinking about something. He decided to take a look in the study room. There were many books there and he needed to find something. When Ryan saw the abnormal plantation, he realized that the world might not be as simple as he imagined. Ryan rummaged around in the study and finally found a copy of Magic Chronicles. If you want to understand a society, the best way is to look at its history. Under the illumination of an inexplicable light source above his head, Ryan began to slowly flip through the book. However, as the number of pages Ryan turned increased, his expression became more and more strange. Finally, he turned the book to the last page, starting from the back to the front. In 1981, the mysterious man was defeated by the savior Harry Potter, and the savior Harry Potter became the only person who survived after being hit by the killing curse. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, born in Godric's Hollow, England in 1881, is the headmaster of Hogwarts. His famous achievements include the discovery of 12 kinds of fire dragon blood. Use, and effective in alchemy with my friend Nico Flamel. Ryan closed the book with a snap, and then began to massage his temples with both hands. He was a little confused now. From the introduction in the book, he could deduce that this should be the world of Harry Potter. Then everything is explained. The room that is as big as 2 or 3 basketball courts should have used the invisible stretching spell, and the many black magic books in the study also indicate that this place is extraordinary. Ryan guessed that this should be a secret stronghold of Death Eaters. But now that Voldemort has fallen, and the Death Eaters have been caught and betrayed, no one has the intention to cry up this stronghold in the Muggle world. And those small wooden sticks in the bedroom should be magic wands. And there is still no trace of the wand. This is really not bad, Ryan said to himself. There was an unsent letter in the drawer of the study, so Ryan opened it without ceremony and read it. After a while, Ryan put down the letter with a weird look on his face. This is indeed a Death Eater stronghold, and Death Eaters usually come here to relax. Those missing Muggles were also captured by Death Eaters and tortured for their pleasure. Apart from the Muggle banishing spell, this stronghold has no harmful spells. Ryan thought about it and expressed his understanding. After all, this place is for entertainment. Who would set up a mechanism in their own entertainment room? The gorgeous chair in the conference room was set up for Voldemort, although he never sat on it once. Thinking of this, Ryan became interested. He walked to the gorgeous chair in the hall and sat down. Moving left and right, Ryan quickly stood up. It's not very comfortable, garbage. After looking around, Ryan decided to go to bed. That bedroom was where the Death Eaters on duty used to rest, but the staff on duty were mobile and it was considered a semi-public area, so there was no black magic set up here. Ryan fell asleep quickly after lying on the bed. He was really tired today. The next morning, Ryan woke up in pain. He kept squeezing his body yesterday afternoon, and now it's time to suffer the consequences. Feeling the pain from his body, Ryan began to transfer the magic power in his body. This is a method in the Book of All Dharma, which can effectively relieve the body's overdraft and pain caused by fatigue. After about 10 minutes, Ryan could barely get off the ground. He walked slowly to the plantation, picked some vegetables from the ground, and ate them without washing them. After finishing 1 cucumber and 2 tomatoes, Ryan patted his stomach, stood up and walked to the study. He wanted to learn those dark arts. His experiences in the past and present life gave Ryan an extraordinary desire for power. However, he also understands that only power that is under his control can be considered real power. Perhaps because of time travel, or because of the Book of All Laws, Ryan discovered that he now has the ability to remember photographs. This surprised Ryan, and he started flipping through the books on basic education on the bookshelf. Ryan understands very well that only by laying a solid foundation can we go further. In the next few days, Ryan's daily routine was very regular. During the day, he went to the study room to read books, and at night, he used the knowledge in the Book of 10,000 Dharmas to condition his body. This body was really lacking, and Ryan doubted whether he would be able to live to be 20 if he continued. About 10 days later, Ryan had finished reading all the books on basic education on the bookshelf, and he was ready to start experimenting with the first spell in his life. As for the one that saved him before, it couldn't be considered a spell at all, it could only be regarded as an application of magic power. But before he can cast the spell, he needs a wand. Chapter 5. Ryan came to the bedroom, where there were 3 different wands. The first one is snow white, looks very holy, and is about 25 centimeters long. Ryan held it in his hand and waved the wand casually like the actors in the movies and TV series in his memory. However, nothing happened. Ryan increased the strength and swing angle again, but still nothing happened. It seemed that it wasn't this one. Ryan put it back into the box and closed the lid. Although he can't use it, it's not a bad thing to keep more wands. The second wand was completely black with slight gold dots, which made Ryan fall in love with it the first time he saw it. He held it in his hand and waved it gently, but still no strange sight appeared. Ryan was a little irritable, he really liked this wand very much. After trying a few more times, the wand gave no response to Ryan. Ryan looked at the wand in his hand. The golden dots shone under the light, and the black color revealed a bit of mystery. After being silent for a long time, Ryan broke it with both hands and then casually broke the wand in half, exposing the core of the wand and threw it on the ground. Silently, Ryan picked up the third box, which contained a dead branch. Just like the dead branches that can be seen everywhere in the winter forest. Ryan picked up the wand without any hope, and a feeling of connectedness suddenly came to his heart. Elder, the tail feathers of the Thestral, 13 inches long. Somehow, the data of this wand suddenly appeared in Ryan's mind. After waving it casually, a black mist emitted from the top of the wand. In the end, the black mist turned into what Ryan looked like in his previous life. Ryan smiled slightly at Ryan and then dissipated. Ryan brought the wand to the study. He sat behind the desk and looked at the wand. Elderberry is the same material as the Elder Wand, and will only surrender to powerful wizards. The Thestral's tail feathers are full of death and ominousness, like dark wizards. 13 inches is a number full of misfortune. In Europe, 13 represents the devil and misfortune. Ryan slowly stroked the wand, feeling more and more fond of it. He is not worried about the misfortune brought by this magic wand. Misfortune will happen to the weak, but the strong never have misfortune. Slowly squeezing the wand, Ryan stood up and left the stronghold. Entering the forest through the tree hole, a ray of sunlight pierced into Ryan's eyes, causing him to squint. Ryan took a deep breath and then exhaled it slowly. He needs to practice dark magic in the forest, but not too close to this stronghold. Because he was not sure whether the movement related to black magic would attract people around him, but he did not dare to take the risk, so he could only go a little further. About half an hour later, Ryan stood in front of a large tree that was as thick as a three-person hug. He raised the Elder Wand in his hand and pointed it at the tree. Torn apart. Nothing happened. At this time, the breeze blew by, and the leaves of the big tree made a rustling sound, as if laughing at Ryan's overestimation. Ryan was not angry. He knew that this kind of advanced magic was not something that a rookie wizard like him, who was new to magic, could unleash. What he planned to practice today was levitation. Is levitation really just for floating feathers? Why not try that floating city in your memory? This was just a small wish for Ryan. From the moment he came into contact with magic, he wanted a splendid life. He didn't want to stay in this chaotic, muddy clear street. And a brilliant life requires enough strength. Whether in the Muggle world or the Wizarding world, strength is always the shortcut to success. The practice of levitation went very smoothly, and Ryan was now able to make a branch float into the sky. Coming out of the tree hole today, besides practicing magic, there is another purpose, and that is hunting. Although there is nothing wrong with people not eating meat for a short period of time, Ryan doesn't want to. Moreover, after catching prey, Ryan can also use it to practice the medical techniques recorded in the Book of All Laws. Ryan has already thought about the next book to be transformed, an enlightenment book that is most suitable for novice mages. Ryan has discovered that he is still too lacking in mysterious knowledge. Although the Death Eaters left behind a few relatively basic books, to be honest, even those books require a certain foundation to understand. Ryan just memorized them. As for understanding them, he just had to grind them slowly. Maybe it was because no one had entered the forest for a long time. Rabbits, birds, and other animals showed no fear at all when they saw Ryan. They had the greatest goodwill toward Ryan, and even came close to him to get close to him. But Ryan was destined to live up to this goodwill. He held a rabbit in one hand and returned to the tree hole with his ears. After finding 2 ropes to tie the rabbit, Ryan first went to the botanical garden to pick some vegetables to fill his stomach. Then he took out a wooden stick and prepared to practice medical skills. Ryan originally planned to go out to see if he could find a sharp stone to use as a stone knife, but after searching for a long time, he couldn't find a stone at all. In desperation, I could only find a thicker-looking wooden stick. Ryan came to the tree hole where the rabbit was tied and hit the rabbit's body with a stick. The rabbit felt pain instantly and wanted to escape, but the rope held it tight. The pain in the body was far greater than the suffocation caused by the tight rope. The rabbit still wanted to escape first, and its 4 legs kept pulling on the ground. When Ryan mentioned the rabbit, his red eyes were filled with a strange color. Ryan knew that it was because the rabbit's eyes were becoming bloodshot. The palm of his hand was close to the rabbit's body, and the magic power began to enter the rabbit's body along Ryan's palm, helping it repair the broken blood vessels and internal organs. After about 5 minutes, the rabbit's body returned to normal, but the rabbit still wanted to escape. This was instinctive, but Ryan didn't care at all. He knocked it down with the stick again and continued the treatment. After 3 times, the rabbit had become nothing more than a skeleton. Ryan patted his head, and then started to pull some grass outside. He didn't know what kind of grass rabbits like to eat, so he simply pulled some grass. The rabbit was also very hungry, and he didn't care whether the grass was something he liked to eat. The three petal mouths squirmed crazily, and the grass on the ground disappeared at an extremely fast speed. Night fell slowly, both rabbits were already very thin, and a bonfire was lit in the tree hole. He didn't dare to light a fire in the stronghold because Ryan was not sure whether there was enough air circulation there. The firelight illuminated Ryan's body, casting a huge shadow on the wall. Ryan was crying his wounds. The water was brought back from the creek nearby, the pot was found in the bedroom, and the cloth was the tattered clothes that Ryan was originally wearing. In addition to fetching water, Ryan also used flotation to catch 2 fish. Now these 2 fish are being grilled by Ryan next to the campfire. Ryan was currently wearing clothes left behind by an unknown Death Eater. They looked a bit too big, but Ryan tightened them with straps. After taking care of the wound, Ryan ate the grilled fish in big mouthfuls. To him who was hungry, this was a delicacy in the world. After eating, Ryan put out the bonfire, then fed the rabbit a few straws, and then went back to the bedroom to sleep. Originally, Ryan planned to have 2 rabbits, eat one and keep the other. But then the fish was caught, so Ryan decided to keep both rabbits, and both rabbits became skinny and bones. The next day, Ryan went to catch 2 more rabbits, because the rabbits yesterday were still skinny and bones, and it would take at least a month to recover. However, there was no way Ryan could wait for them for a month. He planned to raise the animals until they had some meat, and then directly kill them for meat. Ryan spent his days catching rabbits until he caught all the rabbits in the forest. During this time, Ryan kept chasing rabbits in the forest and developed strong muscles. Even if the residents of Clear Street stood in front of Ryan now, they would never recognize him as Ryan. Many obstacles. The escaping rabbit suddenly knocked down a transparent wall and fell to the ground with twitching limbs. It wanted to stand up, but Ryan grabbed Destiny's ears. "Why don't you reunite with your brothers, sisters, parents, and uncles? You have to run away. Not only are you wasting my time, but you are also wasting your time." Ryan raised the rabbit to his eyes and said. Then Ryan happily returned to the stronghold with the rabbit in hand. The stronghold has greatly changed its appearance. The original large conference room was transformed by Ryan into a place for cooking, eating and resting. It can be regarded as a combination of kitchen and living room. All the original tables and chairs were taken outside and sold by Ryan, and the money earned was used to buy paper, pens, and kitchen utensils in the conference room. Paper and pen are used to copy the changes in the Book of All Laws. The memory may fade, but the book will not. In addition, Ryan had about £30,000 left over, all of which was converted into gold and stored in his bedroom. The reason why it was so expensive was entirely thanks to Voldemort. His chair was directly offered for £25,000, while the other tables and chairs only sold for about £7,000. It can be seen that the Death Eaters still like Voldemort very much. It has been almost 2 years since Ryan escaped into the forest, and Ryan is now 9 years old. In the past 2 years, he has read all the books in the study, and has also read 4 or 5 books on the changes in the Book of All Laws, all of which are basic books of various civilizations. This has greatly enriched Ryan's basic knowledge. It can be said that Ryan is now the person with the most solid foundation in the entire magic world. Driven by a solid foundation, Ryan understood the magic of this world very quickly. In addition to the black magic except the soul-stealing curse, Ryan was involved in it, at least he was able to release it. Chapter 6. After learning the basic knowledge of 4 or 5 civilizations, Ryan felt that his foundation was strong enough, and he had already studied all the black magic on the bookshelf. So he began to control the changes in the Book of All Laws. I need a book that can attack and defend the soul, spirit, and will. The content doesn't need to be too profound. The book in Ryan's hand began to change, and a soft light began to emit. When the light disappeared, the book also changed drastically. Soul. The Origin of Man. Apart from the title of the book, there is only a portrait of a woman with a painful face on the cover. Ryan looked at it carefully, but there was no author's name, which made Ryan feel strange. After all, the previous basic books still had the name of Editor-in-Chief XXX. As if sensing Ryan's doubts, the book in his hand sent a stream of heat into Ryan's brain. All names involving fate, cause and effect, and curses will be blocked. Ryan read this sentence word by word, and then fell into deep thought, his palms constantly rubbing the spine of the book. This sentence is very informative. First and most important, the Book of All Laws seems to be very powerful. After all, it can block the curse and cause interference from powerful enemies. The second is someone who is able to travel across the world and curse others through their own name. Finally, it seems that the creator of the Book of All Laws is also a great person. The books he created can be so powerful, so how powerful should he himself be? This made Ryan feel hot. Others can be so powerful, so why can't he? He sat at the desk and copied the book slowly. This is both a transcribing process and a reading process. Ryan's movements were very slow, but he was not in a hurry. He had plenty of time now. About half a year later, Ryan had completely mastered the knowledge in this book, which gave him a clearer understanding of the nature of the soul. But at this time, Ryan didn't want to talk about souls at all. He had something to do that he had been waiting for 2 or 3 years. He has not forgotten what the Charlie gang did to him. He has not forgotten how those pigs attacked him after he went to sell tables and chairs. People always have to pay for what they do, and now, it's time for those bastards to pay the price. The reason why Ryan chose to take revenge now was entirely because of his heart. The second-hand dealer who bought the tables and chairs was easy to talk to, but the Charlie gang must have guns. He had not mastered magic before, so he held back. But now it's different, the time for revenge has come. Ryan slowly ate some food, then sat on the edge of the bed to rest, his fingers wagging on the surface of the Elder Wand. It's almost time, Charlie gang, to get ready for death. Ryan stood in front of the tree hole, arms spread wide, and his black and elegant robe slowly fluttered in the breeze. With a wave of the magic wand, Ryan slowly left the earth and flew towards the moon. This is the flying spell, which is a fusion of the floating spell and the speeding spell. No, 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 dear Ms. Moon, it's better that you don't see the next scene. So, please allow me to cover it up for you. Ryan was floating in mid-air, talking to himself and facing the moon. Then he waved his wand slowly, and countless dark clouds appeared in the sky. The originally clear and silent moonlight disappeared in an instant, and darkness once again enveloped this land full of sin. Ryan flew in the air and came to the Charlie gang station. Of course, he released the disillusionment curse. Ryan knows very well that the Ministry of Magic exists in this world, and he should not be too high profile now. Courage without wisdom can only be called recklessness, and Ryan saw this very clearly. Ryan stood in front of the gate of the Charlie gang station. Today's Charlie gang is no longer as powerful as it was 2 years ago, and the gate is starting to show some rust. The unlocking spell directly opened the door of Charlie's gang, and the man guarding the door was already sitting on the ground and fell asleep. Ryan shook his head, no wonder the Charlie gang was so lonely. Ignoring this little guy, Ryan just took away his soul. Ryan walked all the way in, not meeting a single patrolling person along the way. The entire Charlie gang station seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Ryan entered dormitories one by one and took away souls one after another. He is now the god of death in the night, constantly waving his scythe. Without a trace of blood or a scream, Ryan was like an elf in the darkness, dancing a gorgeous and deadly waltz. Soon, Ryan took away the souls of the entire Charlie gang, except Charlie. Charlie lives in the small villa in the center of the entire Charlie gang. This is the best house in Clear Street. It belonged to another gang 10 years ago. This small villa can also be regarded as the palace of the entire Clear Street. Only the gangs who live here will be recognized as the most powerful gang on Clear Street and can secure the top spot. Quietly using the unlocking spell to open the door of the villa, Ryan didn't make a sound because the creature that could make the sound was dead. Because that German Shepherd indirectly saved Ryan's life, Ryan did not take away its soul, but just let it leave the world in its sleep. Charlie's small villa is full of wild atmosphere, with huge bull skull specimens, naked portraits of women, rough furniture and decorations. Of course, there are also guns hanging on the walls. With a casual levitating spell, the guns flew into the pocket on Ryan's waist as if they were controlled. This is a bag with a seamless stretching spell cast on it, but Ryan's seamless stretching spell is still a bit weak and will expire in 3 months. But emergencies are still possible. While taking away the guns, Ryan did not forget the bullets. 5 grenades and 3 packets of explosives hidden in the cabinet were also taken away by Ryan. Charlie lived on the 2nd floor. Perhaps because he didn't trust his subordinates, Charlie was the only one in the entire small villa. Charlie usually eats with his gang members to avoid being poisoned by his men. Of course, Charlie would not tell his men these things. These fools whose brains are full of muscles only know that their boss is willing to share the joys and sorrows with them, and they are even more happy when they work hard. After walking to Charlie's bedroom, he first gave Charlie a stun spell, and then began to search in Charlie's bedroom. Sure enough, there was a pack of explosives under the bed, which could be detonated by a shock sensor. There was a hidden weapon in the cabinet next to the desk, which would be shot if opened, and there was a pistol placed by the bedside. Taking the pistol in his hand and playing with it a few times, Ryan found that he didn't know how to use it at all. But after fumbling around for a while, I figured out how to use it. Use the levitation charm to transfer Charlie to a chair in the living room downstairs, and then use transfiguration to turn several spoons on the coffee table into ropes. The rope, like several snakes, began to swim along Charlie's body web, and finally completely tied Charlie to death. "Wake up quickly!" Charlie groaned, and then slowly opened his eyes. He moved his body slightly and moved the stool, and now Charlie was completely awake. He first looked around, then stared at the man in black robes in front of him, and said, "I can surrender to you, be a knife in your hand, and a dog by your side. Believe me, I have 4 people under me. Younger brother of 50 people, these can all be used for you." Charlie surrendered so quickly that Ryan was slightly startled, but then he understood. He just saw that all his cards were lost and was making a last-ditch effort. Ryan dared to use Charlie's head to guarantee that as long as he let go of Charlie now, Charlie would attack him immediately. "Hello, Charlie, I think, we haven't seen each other for a long time. I miss you very much, but I just don't know if you miss me." "I miss you so much, brother. Maybe I have forgotten your name, but I am sure that as long as I see your face, I will be able to remember who you are." As soon as Ryan finished speaking, Charlie said very quickly, "Is it?" Ryan dragged out the last sound, and then took off his hood. "Then tell me, who am I?" Charlie looked at the childish-looking kid in front of him and began to search for information about this person in his brain. "It's been a long time since I last saw him, so it was at least a year ago, and he was here to seek revenge. No, maybe this kid is fooling me." Charlie's brain started to work crazily. After about 2 or 3 minutes of silence, he slowly said, "Ryan Zell. Oh, my God, Charlie, you still remember me. What an honor." After saying that, Ryan also gave Charlie a gentleman's salute. "Ha ha ha, Ryan, I knew you were not dead. You know, I don't want to kill you, but I am helpless, you know. I have so many subordinates to manage. When there are more people, you have to write a letter of authority, otherwise it will be difficult to convince the subordinates. I am very glad that you are still alive, my child. You don't know the moment I learned of your death. How sad I am. But fortunately, you are still alive, my child, as long as you are alive." As he spoke, 2 tears flowed from the corners of Charlie's eyes. "This is really good acting skills, Charlie. It's a pity that you are the boss. How about you change your profession and become an actor?" Ryan said with interest. "Oh, really, I'm a little tired of this job too. I'll go for an audition tomorrow, how about it?" Charlie looked very excited, as if it was an honor to be praised by Ryan. "I also think this is a good idea, but before that, I also want to play a game with you," Ryan said slowly, staring at Charlie. "What game?" Charlie asked breathlessly. Ryan pulled out the pistol, ejected the magazine, and then ejected the bullets from the magazine one by one and placed them on the coffee table. Then, Ryan loaded a bullet into the magazine. Push the magazine into the pistol, turn on the safety, and load the gun in one go. Ryan raised his pistol and aimed it at Charlie's head, smiled and said, "Russian turntable." Bang! Charlie's head fell back, his eyes widened, and there was still a trace of shock in them. Chapter 7. After Charlie's death, Ryan took his soul. This is a small spell recorded in the book Soul, The Origin of Man, which can take away the soul of the deceased and use it to cast spells. The person whose soul was taken away died the moment the soul was separated, but there was no wound on the whole body, as if he died in his sleep. But obviously, it was impossible for Ryan to have such corpses exist, so he was patching up the wounds on each corpse. 40 or 50 people died silently in their sleep, and there was no trace of poison in their bodies. This thing was too unbelievable. Muggles will surely rush to report it, and eventually this matter will attract the attention of the Ministry of Magic. As long as 1 or 2 Aurors come over, the Death Eater's stronghold will be exposed, and even Ryan who lives there and has learned dark magic will be discovered. But Ryan only needs to make up for a few cuts, and then this matter will be completely different. Reporters will only report on vendettas between gangs. As for the methods, they will rely on personal imagination and speculation. After all, this doesn't seem to be related to mystery. And based on his own memory, Ryan speculated that this year and next year seemed to be the time for the handover of the Minister of Magic. At this critical moment, Ryan believed that the politicians would not go to war for such a thing. Doing more and making more mistakes will be detrimental to the competition for the Minister of Magic. Moreover, there is a fig leaf for this matter, so they will not make unnecessary moves. Ryan came to the safe house with the soul beads containing souls and began to draw a magic circle with animal blood. The forbidden magic from the book Soul, The Origin of Man, can use the power of the magic circle to purify the impurities in the soul, leaving only the purest soul origin. This kind of soul origin can improve a person's soul in all aspects without side effects. Forbidden knowledge is taboo because it is powerful and dangerous. Once this kind of magic spreads on a large scale, there will only be one end: the whole world will become a pig farm for the strong. So this kind of knowledge has been defined as taboo knowledge the moment it was created. Ryan drew every detail carefully, so he painted very slowly. But the magic circle itself is not complicated, and even Ryan paid attention to details and completed it quickly. After placing the collected soul beads on the nodes of the magic circle, Ryan sat cross-legged in the middle of the magic circle and began to input magic power into the magic circle. The influx of magic power caused the entire magic circle to start operating, emitting a burst of coquettish blood-red light. The soul beads placed on the nodes were broken one after another, and the souls stored inside appeared in the air due to the broken soul beads. They looked around blankly, but quickly noticed Ryan. As undead, they know that it was Ryan who killed them. This is the price of the spell. The price of using the soul to cast spells is that the undead have the right to know who killed them. These dead souls began to scream at Ryan, and they wanted to pounce on Ryan and tear off a large piece of flesh. However, the effect of the magic circle restricted their actions, and they could only watch as Ryan manipulated the magic circle. The red light-emitting magic circle quickly ignited a trace of red flame. The flame seemed not to be very hot because Ryan's clothes were not ignited. But the temperature seemed to be very high, because there was a trace of pain on the faces of the dead souls. They yelled, each fighting to get out of the range of the flames, but it didn't work. They wailed and rolled on the ground. Slowly, they began to become sluggish. The wails slowly faded away, and so did the pained expressions. In the end, the expressionless souls just floated quietly above the flames. When the last soul lost its expression, Ryan began to manipulate the magic circle to make changes. The red flame began to slowly turn into purple, and the dead souls who had no joy or sorrow once again showed painful expressions, but they looked much duller than before. There was no howling, no rolling, just standing still and an expression of extreme pain. As the flames burned, their shapes slowly disappeared, and finally turned into small round beads emitting magical light. This is the soul child, the purest part of a soul, which can be absorbed by people without side effects. Ryan collected these souls, then held one in his hand and observed it carefully. The surface of Hunza is extremely irregular and full of ravines. There seemed to be bubbles inside, but they disappeared quickly, which made Ryan wonder if there was something wrong with his eyes. After thinking about it, Ryan threw the soul into his mouth. As soon as it reached the mouth, the soul immediately melted and disappeared, followed by a cool airflow from the mouth to the brain. This airflow does not make people feel cold, but makes people feel comfortable, just like the pleasant spring breeze. Using a small magic spell, Ryan was surprised to find that his control over magic power had improved, and the total amount of magic power had also increased slightly. This surprised Ryan, and it took him a long time to resist the urge to eat all the souls in one go. It is indeed forbidden knowledge. This is really too powerful. Ryan roared in a low voice, but it is also very dangerous. After eating that soul son, he actually had the idea that practicing hard would be better than taking drugs, and even had the urge to rush out and kill everyone and then train them all into soul sons. This is not a side effect, but the increase in strength is too tempting. However, this also made Ryan more curious about forbidden knowledge. He has already thought of the next book he wants to change, which is a book introducing forbidden knowledge. Ryan would not foolishly rush forward to learn forbidden knowledge directly. Although some forbidden knowledge has no side effects, most of the forbidden knowledge has an unreasonable price, and the opposite is an unreasonable power. Magic is always balanced, and it is impossible for him to let you buy nuclear weapons for $1. Unless you use tools, that is, magic circles or magic props. The sky outside is still gloomy, and Ryan's magic added a little more magic last night. However, Clear Street was very lively at this time, and even though Ryan was sitting in a tree hole away from the street, he could still hear the cheers. The death of a total of 47 people was like a slap in the face of the London police. Even if the dead were butchers with bloody hands, even if the dead were found on Clear Street, which the government didn't want to care about. But such a huge number of deaths still made the public panic. Even because the London police have not even speculated on the circumstances of the crime or any information on the suspects, some people have begun to express their dissatisfaction with the current government. But Ryan didn't want to worry about any of this, he just wanted to have a good sleep. After killing more than 40 people in a row, and returning to preside over the magic circle, Ryan has now reached his limit, and he needs to rest to relax himself. When Ryan woke up again, Miss Moon had revealed her face again. Ryan stood in front of the tree hole, constantly recalling the scene of killing Charlie's gang. There was a slight discomfort, as this was the first time in his 2 lives that he had been stained with blood, but Ryan quickly adjusted. His heart has long been cold. When did it start? Ryan looked up at the moon in the sky and asked himself. Perhaps, ever since that man killed his mother in front of his eyes, his heart has become cold. Ryan stood for a long time, until the cold dew wet his clothes, making him feel a bit chilly before he came back to his senses. Let's go, have something to eat. Ryan muttered something, as if to himself. Having solved his personal problem, Ryan lay down on the bed, but he didn't feel sleepy at all after sleeping all day. He stared at the constantly glowing oil lamp above his head, watching the flame slowly emit light, occasionally swaying once or twice under the influence of the air current. After thinking wildly for a while, he began to think about tomorrow's trip again. He needs to go to the second-hand store where he sold tables and chairs last time to sell something more, such as Charlie's collection or something. Finally, Ryan fell asleep due to his random thoughts. The next day, Ryan got up very early. The sun outside had just risen, and the entire forest was shrouded in mist. But this couldn't stop Ryan. With a wave of his magic wand, the thick fog dispersed to both sides as if it had been pushed aside by a big hand, leaving a wide avenue. After catching 2 fish from the creek, Ryan happily drank a bowl of fish soup as his breakfast. Then he began to take out the belongings from the seamless stretch pocket on his waist, and then wrapped them in ordinary bags. All the pounds found in Charlie's gang were in small denominations, with coins accounting for the majority, and the rest were only small denominations of less than 20 pounds. Ryan filled a sack and stuffed it into the seamless stretch pocket on his waist. After casting a disguise spell, Ryan started walking to the second-hand store. Because of the illusion body curse, no one along the way noticed Ryan, and Ryan also observed the passers-by with interest. People in Clear Street gathered together in 2s and 3s, talking about the Charlie gang. Occasionally, when a pair of policemen pass by, people will consciously shut up and wait for the policeman to go away before continuing the conversation. The impact of the destruction of the Charlie gang was far greater than Ryan imagined. The London police station stationed a team of more than 20 people here to take charge of the Charlie gang. Thanks to the police, the gangsters on Clear Street began to restrain themselves, and the residents of Clear Street also showed a rare smile. Reen slid past everyone like a loach. He was in a good mood and slowly danced an unknown dance. It's a pity that no one saw this dance, only the sunshine and the earth. But Ryan didn't care, he was used to being alone. Chapter 8. In an alley not far from the second-hand store, Ryan lifted the disillusionment spell and took out the bag of coins from his seamless stretch pocket. Disguising himself, Ryan struggled to pick up the bag and head to the second-hand store. The sharp-eyed doorman of the second-hand shop had already seen Ryan in advance and ran inside with a look of horror on his face. Soon, Butch, the manager of the second-hand store, stood at the door. "Dear Mr. Sacco, Dryer Trading House welcomes you." After saying that, Butch gave an elegant gentlemanly salute. "No need to be disrespectful. Last time, the young gentleman in front of him came to trade with some good chairs. Originally, Butch wanted to swallow this batch of goods, but he didn't expect to encounter a tough problem. After the transaction was completed, he sent more than a dozen good men to chase Ryan, but in the end those people came back, but they forgot what they were going out for. This sent a chill down Butch's back, fearing that he might accidentally provoke some devil or the like. Westerners are always devout in their faith. Butch has been going to church to pray almost every day for the past 2 days, which is really ridiculous. An executioner covered in blood went to a holy church to pray for God's forgiveness. Mr. Sacco, I wonder what the deal is for coming here this time. Butch looked at Ryan with a flattering face, but he kept getting discouraged in his heart. He really didn't want to face this mysterious figure, but he was also afraid that the person he was receiving wasn't sensible enough. If you offend this person then, the consequences will be disastrous. Bang! The sack made a loud noise when it hit the ground, startling everyone. Butch signaled to one of his men standing nearby, and the man who received the signal stepped forward, carefully picked up the sack, then poured out all the contents with the mouth of the bag facing down. Instantly, there was a sound of metal hitting the floor, and everyone's eyes were focused on it. Convert all this money into gold, and follow the rules. Ryan used magic to change his voice, which sounded a little vicissitudes of life. By the way, there is also this ring, let's change it together. After saying that, Ryan threw a ruby ring on the pile of coins. When Butch saw the ruby and diamond ring, his pupils shrank slightly, and then he used all his strength to slowly pull out an extremely ugly smile and said, Mr. Sacco, please don't worry. We will work hard, please rest assured. You damn bastards, didn't you see that Mr. Sacco was thirsty? Why don't you go get some tea? And you ungrateful people, didn't you hear what Mr. Sacco said? Exchange these things into gold, do you understand? Butch turned around and started shouting loudly, kicking and slapping him from time to time. Under Butch's scolding, everyone began to get busy. The one who poured the tea, the one who crying the coins, and Butch even found a pretty woman to start beating Ryan's back and pinching his legs. But Ryan waved his hand and asked them all to leave from him. Mr. Sacco, do you have any dissatisfaction? Seeing Ryan driving away the person who was serving him, Butch stepped forward and asked cautiously. No, I'm just not used to so many people surrounding me. It makes me feel a little unsafe. I think you should understand, Mr. Butch. Ryan moved closer to Butch and whispered. Yes, Mr. Sacco, if you please. Butch said with a smile. Although all Ryan brought was some change, there were quite a few people from the second-hand store, and the quantity was quickly counted. Mr. Sacco, the total is £12,000. According to the market price, it can be exchanged for about 975 grams of gold. I make the decision and give you a whole kilogram. What do you think? Butch kept asking in front of Ryan. Nod and bow. By the way, that ring is not easy to value. If you don't mind, I will accept the 2 kilograms of gold as a friend. After saying that, Butch stared at Ryan, fearing that Ryan would be dissatisfied. Mr. Butch, I remember, don't you charge half of the exchange fee for this money? Why, you look down on me. Ryan's words, which were neither happy nor sad, made Butch's shiny forehead sweat start to ooze out. No, it's just compensation for offending you last time. Butch kept laughing along with him, which made Ryan feel like he was punched in cotton. But now that the goal is achieved and the benefits are there, don't be too greedy. Ryan nodded slightly. Butch was overjoyed and handed a small black cloth belt to Ryan. Go slowly. By the way, the police have set up sentries on the main street of Clear. There is also a team patrolling the alleys about every 3 hours. Please be careful. Just when Ryan was about to step out, Ryan's words came to mind behind his back. Ryan nodded to show that he understood. Watching Ryan walk away, Butch slowly breathed a sigh of relief, took out a handkerchief from the pocket of his expensive suit, and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Boss, isn't he just a little kid? Are you so afraid of him? The secretary-like person who had been standing behind Butch asked. After hearing this question, everyone pricked up their ears and began to pay attention to the situation here. Butch glanced at it and immediately understood what his men were thinking. He said in a slightly louder voice, Did you see that ruby and diamond ring? That is Charlie's favorite ring. Charlie always wears it. Superior. I remember that someone once accidentally touched Charlie's diamond ring, and Charlie beat that person to death. After a pause, Butch continued. Boss, what do you mean? If Charlie didn't die, there would be absolutely no way that diamond ring would appear here. Butch made his words clear, and suddenly there was a gasp from all around. Boss, why don't we confess to the police? The police said that as long as someone provides clues, they will forget about it. As soon as Butch finished speaking, a clever guy jumped out. Butch looked over and saw a thin and short man smiling smugly. When the man saw Butch looking over, he thought his idea was approved by Butch, so he became even more proud. Butch walked towards him, stood in front of the man, raised his hand and slapped him hard. "Boss, I'm sorry. It's my fault in discipline. Please punish me." A little leader immediately stood next to him. The little leader did not shirk responsibility and directly took the blame. He knew that Butch would be reluctant to scold such subordinates, because Butch liked subordinates who had the courage to shoulder responsibilities. But this time he obviously miscalculated, and Butch gave him a hard slap, and then said to his secretary, "Take these two people away. I feel upset when I see them. Since they are so good at talking, let them finish talking today and stop talking in the future." Ignoring the two people's whining and begging for mercy, Butch turned to everyone and said, "I know some people are thinking why I want to deal with these two stupid guys, and I will tell you the reason now. Because their advice will destroy the entire trading house. We may be able to ask for help from the police, but can we always ask for help? When the prey relaxes, that's when the trapper strikes. How are we better than the Charlie gang? The Charlie gang was destroyed in that man's hands, let alone us. Perhaps some of you may think that he is just a child and cannot be the mastermind behind the downfall of the Charlie gang. But, do you dare to bet? Thinking about your beautiful wife and lovely children, do you dare to bet?" Butch's words made everyone fall into silence. After a long time, someone took the lead in returning to the trading house and started working. The first one will be followed by the second. Slowly, all employees have returned to their posts. Butch was right, they didn't dare to gamble, they couldn't afford to lose. Life on Clear Street is already dark enough, and getting into such a big trouble at this time will undoubtedly make it worse. So everyone chose silence. On the other side, after leaving the trading house, Ryan did not leave in a hurry. Instead, he used the disguise curse to hide aside. After waiting for about 5 or 6 minutes, after making sure that no one was chasing him, Ryan slowly walked back to the tree hole. Take out the gold nuggets from the Wuhan stretch pocket and put them together with the gold from the last transaction and the gold and silver treasures of Charlie's gang. The mountain-like treasure emits a bewitching light under the light. Ryan just looked at it for a while and then left. He hadn't practiced magic for several days. If you sail against the current, you will retreat if you don't advance, and the same is true for the practice of magic. Time passes, night falls, and the bright moon shines in the sky. Ryan sat on the dining table and slowly tasted the food on the table. In the afternoon, Ryan bought some ingredients and seasonings. Perhaps because of Ryan's sensible appearance when he went out to buy food alone at such a young age, those aunts were very enthusiastic towards Ryan and added a little extra to every dish for Ryan. Ryan felt a warmth that he hadn't seen in a long time. After dinner, Ryan washed the pots and dishes and then went back to bed. After solving the hatred of Charlie's gang, and the second-hand shop was willing to mediate, now Ryan no longer has any nostalgia for the Muggle world. Let's renovate this place tomorrow. We have to live there for another 2 years. Thinking of this, Ryan suddenly lost his sleep. He got up from the bed, sat on the desk in the bedroom, and began to write and draw. We can build a fireplace. Make a note of it first. There is also the ventilation problem, which must be solved at that time. By the way, the kitchen fumes are also needed. You have to buy a sofa and some books. It will always be helpful to draw parallels. The study needs to be set up with a traceless extension spell and a few more bookshelves. The stronghold needs to, wait, it doesn't seem appropriate to call it a stronghold anymore, so let's call it a home. The home also needs to add some defensive magic and traps. Ryan wrote as he spoke, making corrections from time to time. 2 hours later, Ryan stretched himself, looked at the plan he had written, and nodded with satisfaction. "Good night, Ryan," Ryan said to himself while lying on the bed, and then turned out the light. Chapter 9. Early the next morning, Ryan jumped out of bed excitedly. This was the first day he decided to renovate his home. He liked the feeling of building a house of his own with his own hands. After a simple breakfast, Ryan picked up the wand and started his journey of demolishing the house. There is no need for Ryan to move in the botanical garden. The traceless stretching spell arranged there is very profound. In the bedroom, Ryan planned to build a fireplace. With a simple wave of the wand, the wall began to dent inward, gradually revealing the shape of a fireplace. But Ryan was worried about the emission of smoke. He was in a forest. As long as there was a trace of smoke, the London Fire Department would immediately discover it. Forest fires are no joke, not to mention that this is close to London. For a moment, Ryan was in trouble and didn't know how to start. After thinking for a while, Ryan gave up. With a wave of his wand, the originally concave wall returned to its original shape. After looking through the decoration plan planned last night, Ryan didn't know what to do for a while. Oh, forget it, let's read the book first. Interpretation of Forbidden Knowledge first. Ryan walked into the study dejectedly. A First Interpretation of Forbidden Knowledge is a new book written by Ryan, which focuses on taboo knowledge. Ever since Ryan tried the power of forbidden knowledge the day before yesterday, he has been interested in this dangerous power. Opening the book, Ryan began to study it word for word, and from time to time he was still writing notes in the notebook on the desk. Ryan forgot to eat lunch today because the book was so attractive. If his stomach hadn't been reminding him crazily, he could have continued reading. After simply filling his stomach, Ryan returned to the study. The knowledge in this book completely touched Ryan's heartstrings. Why is there a difference in cost for both forbidden knowledge? Because some knowledge goes against the rules of the world's operation, and some knowledge complies with the rules of the world's operation. Although we can in a world without burning rules, set fire to trees, but the cost is too high. We should comply with the rules of the world and obtain the greatest results at the least cost. This is the magician. In a world with technology, the simplest way to deal with experimental waste is to convert it into gold by rearranging atomic nuclei. In most technological worlds, gold is hard currency. The array is as follows, but this requires a lot of magic power, because these worlds follow the law of conservation of energy. Please don't be afraid, we can use all energy, wind energy, light energy, heat energy, magic energy, faith, etc. We need a simple little magic circle to achieve it. Just like an oil pump, we extract oil from the ground, and then part of the oil is supplied to the oil pump to continue running, and the remaining part can be used to supply other machines. Its magic circle as follows. When Ryan saw this, he slowly closed the book, his eyes emitting a terrifying light. But it was already very late now, and he knew that his current state was not suitable for setting up a magic circle, so Ryan forced himself to lie down on the bed and sleep. Early the next morning, Ryan got up early again. He picked 2 fresh fruits from the botanical garden for breakfast, and then began to decorate his home. First for the bedroom, he first made the shape of the fireplace, then the flue, and finally Ryan dug a huge cavity in the open space next to it. In the future, all waste will be sent to this cavity by Ryan, and Ryan will set up a material transformation array here. It can be foreseen that Ryan will definitely not be short of gold in the future. As for the magic gathering array, Ryan plans to dig another layer under his house and place it there when the time comes. As soon as he said it, Ryan rolled up his sleeves excitedly, then took out his wand and drew a magic circle at the bottom of the hole. This magic circle does not require any materials at all. The magic power itself is the material used to draw the magic circle. This is the key to making it taboo. This magic circle is not complicated, and it is not a problem at all for Ryan, who has perfectly received basic education from 3 or 4 civilizations. In 3 hours, Ryan completed the arrangement of the material conversion array, but now there is no magic supply and cannot be tested. Then, Ryan came to the study room. He planned to open a door to the underground. As for the location, he would put it behind the bookshelf. After all, you only need to set up the protective spell, and it will be the same wherever you put it. Magic has shown unparalleled convenience in this regard. With just a wave of the magic wand, the soil on both sides slowly recedes to both sides as if it has wisdom. Soon, a huge space was formed underground, and Ryan drew the magic gathering array in the same way. The next thing to do is to connect the 2 magic circles. This task is very simple, because the magic power can already be transmitted through the void, and only needs to complete the port matching. Because both magic circles were drawn by Ryan himself, the ports are the same. Slowly input magic power into the magic aggregation array, and soon the array lit up with blue fluorescence. Occasionally, some small light points appeared in the air and blended in, making the blue light even brighter. Returning to the garbage discharge hole, Ryan adjusted the magic circle and then turned on the switch of the magic circle port. For a moment, yellow light began to emit. Ryan threw a handful of dirt over, and soon, a small piece of gold fell down. The magic circle was successful. Ryan stepped forward and bumped the gold nugget in his hand. It was only 1/10 of the weight of soil. This is weird because the book says it doesn't consume matter, just magic power. Ryan returned to the study and opened the book to find out what caused it. But after searching for a long time, I couldn't find any explanation of the situation. Until the end, Ryan focused on one word: world rules. Is it possible that the rules of the world are like this? Converting gold through magic can only convert 1/10? Of course, there is another way to test the rules of the world in the book, which is to release a spell that links the world, and then operate the magic circle during the process of casting the spell. At this time, you can perceive a trace of information from the world. The author of the book also thoughtfully included a simple spell at the back: detection. Although the exploration technique is very simple, it involves the world itself. The principle is to connect with the world and get information about the items in front of you from the world, which is equivalent to going to the world library to look up information. Ryan learned the probing technique and went to the garbage discharge hole to test it. Facts proved that Ryan's deduction was not wrong. The rules of the world were like this, and Ryan was immediately relieved. Next, Ryan continued to renovate his cabin. The self-repairing defensive array, charm array, plague array, underworld teleportation array, etc. are enough to drink a pot of wine from the offending enemies. The self-repairing defensive array can repair itself in an instant as long as it is not broken by someone in an instant. The charm array can charm people with weak willpower. The plague array can create plague, a kind of array that can destroy both jade and stone. The underworld teleportation array, as long as someone accidentally steps on it, they will be instantly transported to the underworld. Of course, there is also the indispensable time and space blockade to prevent anyone from leveraging the time and space of the Ryan family to attack. In addition, the air freshening array, constant temperature array, space expansion array and other life arrays were also completed by Ryan. The home is also equipped with expensive carpets, sofas, etc. This took Ryan 2 years and countless gold. But now gold is no different than dirt to Ryan. If Ryan is willing, he can even destroy the entire world's gold market immediately. On July 14, 1991, Ryan woke up from bed. He first checked the mailbox erected in front of the tree hole for any letters from Hogwarts, and then went to the bathroom to wash up. In order to receive the Hogwarts admission notice accurately, Ryan closed the concealment circle these days. There is still no letter from Hogwarts in the mailbox, but Ryan is not worried at all, because even if he cannot go to Hogwarts, he can continue to explore magic. Several years of secret practice have slightly calmed down the violence in his heart, and also allowed him to change his views on the world. After a delicious breakfast, Ryan came to the study room to read. Today's study may be a little inappropriate to describe as a study. With the help of the space expansion array, Ryan's study has become a huge library. There are books on dark magic left by Death Eaters in the library, as well as books on otherworldly magic copied by Ryan over the years, but most of them are Muggle books. But Ryan knew very well that as time went by, his library would eventually shock the whole world. After lunch, Ryan began to practice magic. Over the years, he has never been disconnected for a day. The consistent exercise and adequate nutrition over the years have made Ryan look less like an 11-year-old child and more like a 14 or 15-year-old boy. Ryan still maintained the legend of Forest Night Devil because it could avoid a lot of trouble for him. Of course, Ryan did not kill them. Every time the missing person would be lying intact at the entrance of the forest the next day, he had no memory of what happened inside the forest. Ryan, who is obsessed with the magical world, doesn't care if he needs people of the same kind around him, and he even subconsciously stays away from people. Except for necessary shopping, Ryan has been wandering around the forest, hoping to harvest some strange things. But except for a few very common herbs, Ryan gained nothing. The road to industrialization has completely destroyed the plants that are demanding on the growing environment on this land, leaving only plants with strong vitality. For dinner, Ryan will choose some light food, then do something he likes, and finally fall asleep. This is what a day in the life of Ryan has been like for 2 years. Chapter 10. On July 15, Ryan came to the mailbox again to check. Fortunately, this time a letter appeared in the mailbox. Ryan smiled. He had the qualifications to enter the magic world of this world. Although he knew the location of the leaky cauldron, in order to avoid being discovered, Ryan had never contacted the magical world. Now he had a perfect excuse. Ryan picked up the letter and it read on the cover. In the woods off Clear Street. Death Eater's stronghold. Mr. Ryan Zell. Ryan's pupils shrank and he was horrified. He didn't expect that his residence would be discovered so easily. Cuckoo. An owl that was brown in color and slightly spotted landed on Ryan's mailbox and looked at Ryan with his head tilted. Ryan didn't see the owl at all. He was still immersed in the shock of the admission notice. However, Ryan quickly adjusted his mentality. He is confident in his current strength. Even if you can't beat it, there's still no problem if you want to leave. And his home is no longer the simple Death Eater stronghold before, but has become a real fortress. The owl got a little impatient and scratched the letter in Ryan's hand with its sharp claws. Reen noticed the movement and raised his head to look at it. "Are you waiting for my reply?" Ryan asked uncertainly. The owl nodded. "But I haven't opened it yet, why don't you wait first?" This time the owl hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. "After all, there is nothing I can do about it. It was the little wizard who asked me to wait. I can't just leave the little wizard alone. Everything is for work." The owl comforted himself like this, and then followed Ryan into the room. Ryan put the owl on the shelf where he usually hangs clothes, and then poured some nuts on the small stool nearby, which he usually used for entertainment. After Ryan poured some water for the owl, he took the letter to the study. After sitting at the desk, Ryan opened the letter. There were 2 pieces of paper inside. The first piece of paper said, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. President of the International Federation of Magic, President of the Wizards Association, and First-Level Magician of the Order of Merlin. Dear Mr. Zell. We are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Attached is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to begin on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl to bring your reply before July 31st. In addition, since you are a Muggle-born wizard, we will send a professor to explain the situation and lead you into the wizarding world. Vice Principal, female. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall." The second piece of paper is a list of books and equipment needed for school. Ryan moved his eyes to the admission notice, and he noticed that it had one more line of text than the one he remembered. But this should be the case. It is simply impossible for parents to send their children to a magic school that they have never heard of just based on an unknown admission notice. If any parents really did this, then they would probably have given up on this child. Taking out a pen and paper from the drawer next to the desk, Ryan wrote a letter with extremely beautiful cursive handwriting and handed it to the owl. In addition to learning magic, Ryan was also interested in all other knowledge. And because of his gift of photographic memory, Ryan learned knowledge very quickly, and of course, he mastered it very quickly. After the owl received the letter, it spread its wings and flew away. Ryan quickly stopped it. The current ban on Ryan's cabin is fully open. If he really flew out so carelessly, he would probably turn into a pile of coke before he got outside. The owl was a little dissatisfied with Ryan stopping him, and kept calling cuckoo. Ryan glanced at it, and it glanced at Ryan. Seeing that the owl didn't believe him, Ryan took a pine wood for the fireplace and threw it out. In an instant, the pine wood was flooded, roasted by fire, struck by lightning, blown by wind, illuminated, torn, smashed, and destroyed. It became nothingness. The owl watched all this happening with wide eyes, and the letter in its mouth fell to the ground because it was too surprised. "Mr. Owl, I think a good postman will not lose his letters, right?" Ryan picked up the letter with a smile, returned it to the owl, and then said slowly. The owl quickly took the letter from Ryan's hand, and then nodded crazily like pounding garlic. As soon as Ryan brought it outside the tree hole, it couldn't wait to fly away. This place is too dangerous for a little owl. The owl who delivered the message thought so. Ryan watched as its back slowly turned into a small black dot until it was no longer visible. A magical creature with great intelligence and a keen intuition about poisons. 1/3 of the nuts that Ryan poured to the owl just now were spiked with something. Although not fatal, it can make the owl's life miserable for a while. However, the result was beyond Ryan's expectation. The owl ate only 1/3 of the nuts, which happened to be the poisonous third. "This is really interesting," Ryan muttered, turned and returned to his room. Because of the interruption from the admission notice, he needed to hurry up to complete today's plan. The next day, July 16th, Ryan once again found a reply letter from Hogwarts in his mailbox. "Dear Mr. Zell. Welcome to join the Hogwarts family. This is a very wise choice. I will visit at 9 a.m. on the 17th. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall." After Ryan read the letter, he ignored it and continued his daily life. At the same time, the headmaster of Hogwarts was in the room. "Albus, why do you want me to pay attention to that new little wizard? To be honest, I don't think a new little wizard can have much ability. Professor McGonagall was wearing green robes and sitting opposite Dumbledore. Minerva, address, did you notice the address? Dumbledore raised his head, his half-moon eyes reflected light, making his eyes unclear. What address? Is there anything wrong with the address? The owl delivered the letter and came back with a reply. Minerva, I know it's wrong to ask you to work overtime during the summer vacation, but you should at least pay more attention to the new little wizards. For example, where do they live? Before Dumbledore could finish speaking, Professor McGonagall answered the question directly. Yes, you can take a look at this. Dumbledore took out a letter from the table and handed it to Professor McGonagall. An admission notice? I remember that all the admission notices for this year have been sent out, oh, by the way, except for that one. Yes, but please let us focus on what is at hand. This is an acceptance letter that I remade using the registration book. You can look at its envelope. Professor McGonagall's face was full of doubts, but she still lowered her head and read out in a low voice, in the forest outside Clear Street, the Death Eater stronghold is under the control of Mr. Ryan Zell. It seems to be nothing. Wait. The Death Eater's stronghold. Professor McGonagall's voice suddenly became louder. The portraits behind Dumbledore were awakened, but instead of cursing, they began to discuss the explosive news. But weren't all the Death Eaters captured 10 years ago? Professor McGonagall was obviously unwilling to believe that a newly enrolled young wizard was an evil Death Eater. Minerva, you and I both know that the mysterious man is not dead. But this child should not be a Death Eater. It's simple. His parents are both Muggles. The reason is simple and ridiculous, but it is definitely the most convincing. Yes, this child is not a Death Eater, but how could he? Maybe it's an accident, maybe it's inevitable, this is fate. Minerva, pay more attention to that child tomorrow. We can't let the second Voldemort appear again. I understand, Albus. By the way, what do you think about Harry's enrollment? Professor McGonagall took Ryan's matter to heart, and then became concerned about the Savior's enrollment again. Albus, do you know how hateful those two Muggles are? They locked Harry in the stairwell and kept bullying and insulting him. He is the hero of the entire wizarding world and shouldn't be like this. Professor Ge became excited as he spoke. Calm down, Minerva. This thing is my fault. I didn't expect it to be like this. By the way, would you like some cockroaches? It smells very good. As he spoke, Dumbledore took out a glass jar filled with cockroaches from the drawer, opened it, took out a few from inside and handed them to Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall glanced at him with disgust and said, "Thank you, I'm not interested in this. Now I really want to know if these two Muggles keep delaying, Harry will miss the enrollment date. The pile of cockroaches is a great delicacy. It's a pity that Minerva you missed this opportunity to taste the delicious food. If those two Muggles dare to interfere with Harry, I will ask Hagrid to go there." There was a hint of darkness in the blue eyes, but it was well hidden and Professor McGonagall didn't notice it. After sitting for a while, Professor McGonagall stood up and left. Dumbledore sat behind the desk, not knowing what he was thinking, and murmured, "Petunia Dursley, Vernon Dursley, Dudley Dursley, can family love really be so twisted? Ariana, Ariana." The principal's portraits seemed to have noticed something was wrong with Dumbledore, and they all lowered their voices and began to whisper. Fawkes seemed to realize that his master was wrong, and he quickly sang a song. The Song of the Phoenix quickly brought Dumbledore out of his memories. He wiped the tears from his eyes and said to Fawkes, "Thank you, Fawkes, I will bring you your favorite candy next time." Fawkes shouted twice happily. Chapter 11. On July 17th, after finishing breakfast, Ryan took a novel and biography and sat on the sofa in the living room to relax. It might take him a whole day to go to Diagon Alley today, so Ryan simply decided to take a vacation for himself. Professor McGonagall was very punctual, and at 9 o'clock, Ryan learned through the magic circle that a huge source of magic power was coming to his residence. So he put down his book and came to the door to greet Professor McGonagall before he arrived. It was a tabby cat, leaping through the forest at an extraordinary speed, and then landed in front of Ryan's door. "Professor McGonagall." Although it was a question, Ryan's words were full of affirmation. The cat glanced at Ryan in confusion, and then turned into a majestic middle-aged woman wearing a robe and a pointed hat in Ryan's eyes. "Ryan Zell? How are you sure that I am Professor McGonagall?" Professor McGonagall stared at the well-dressed and handsome young man in front of her. "You wrote yesterday and said you would come at 9 o'clock today, and I sensed the huge magic power in your body. Unless you have something to do temporarily, I can't think of any great wizard who would visit this small house in the Muggle forest. Ryan's words were neither humble nor overbearing, which made Professor McGonagall feel more favorable, and he became more and more kind to Ryan in front of him. Have you been living here alone? Yes, Professor, since I was 7 years old. Ryan replied without thinking. He had already thought of answers to all possible questions last night. Professor McGonagall, the door may not be the place to talk. Please come in. As he said this, Ryan made a gesture to invite in. Professor McGonagall thought about what Dumbledore had told her to observe the little wizard in front of her yesterday, and felt that this was a good opportunity. So Professor McGonagall nodded and followed Ryan into the room. After entering the room, Professor McGonagall looked around. The decoration in the house is very lifelike. There are not many things, but most of them have traces of use, which shows that the owner of this house is mainly practical. Professor McGonagall, what would you like, tea? Or coffee? A cup of green tea, thank you. Ryan took out his wand and pointed it at the teapot, and the cold water inside boiled instantly. Then used the flying spell to make the teacup fly over, and finally put in the tea leaves. Professor McGonagall was a little dazzled by this series of operations. She reluctantly said, "It seems that you have already experienced the beauty of magic." Of course, magic is very beautiful and very convenient. Ryan brought the brewed tea to Professor McGonagall and said with a smile. With all due respect, where did you learn this? This used to be a Death Eater stronghold, so naturally there are some stocks, including my wand. As he spoke, Ryan showed his wand. Professor McGonagall nodded. She didn't know what she was thinking. She just blew the hot air mechanically and took a sip of tea. Ryan was also happy that Professor McGonagall didn't speak. He still understood that talking too much would lead to mistakes. The two fell into silence until they finished the cup of tea. Mr. Zell, it's almost time, should we go? In addition to you, there is a young wizard who is about to enter school today who wants me to accompany him into the magic world. Of course, please wait a moment while I go make some preparations. After Ryan finished speaking, he went to the bedroom. He randomly grabbed 2 handfuls of the treasures he had saved over the years and put them into his seamless stretch pocket. Nowadays, Ryan can solidify the traceless stretching spell, but there is also a problem, that is, if the material of the artifact is not good, even if the magic is solidified, it will lose its effect due to the aging of the material. But at least it was longer than the previous 3 months. Soon, Ryan was ready. When he came outside, Professor McGonagall was waiting for him. When he saw Ryan coming out, he said, "Are you ready? It may feel a little uncomfortable later, just bear with it and you'll be fine." Operating. You even know this? Professor McGonagall asked in surprise. Yes, the Death Eaters left quite a few books. That's really. Okay, hold on to my hand, we are about to move. Professor McGonagall pursed her lips. She wanted to ask the Death Eaters if they had left any books on dark magic. But she quickly realized that it was strange that the Death Eaters did not leave any books on dark magic. Ryan didn't feel any discomfort from the squeezing sensation caused by apparition, because he had also moved instantaneously. How could Ryan not try this magical skill? After failing more than 10 times, Ryan mastered this skill. As for the severed body caused by the failure of phantom transfer, Ryan used forbidden spells to restore it. First interpretation of forbidden knowledge records several powerful and low-cost spells, one of which is time regression. Time rewind, it can restore the body of the designated casting target to the appearance 1 hour ago, at the cost of permanently losing half of the magic power in the body, and it can only be used once a day. But note that using it on yourself has no consequences, because after losing half of the magic power, the body will return to what it was an hour ago. In other words, if you use this spell on yourself, it is actually a powerful recovery spell, but if you use it on others, you will have to pay a price. Professor McGonagall thought that Ryan would crawl on the ground and vomit, but unexpectedly, Ryan just rested against the wall. Have you ever learned to disapparate? Professor McGonagall asked uncertainly. It was a fluke. Professor McGonagall couldn't help but twitch at Ryan's words. How dare you? Do you know the danger of this spell? Even if there is a teacher at Hogwarts, only young wizards over the age of 17 are allowed to learn it. Do you know why? Because at that time, the little wizard can have the magic power and knowledge accumulation to learn this spell. But I don't have anyone to teach me. Ryan's light words made Professor McGonagall swallow the rest of her words. She looked at the little wizard in front of her and felt a little distressed for the first time. It's as if an ignorant toddler picked up a gun and fired. If a young child points his gun at himself, the consequences will be disastrous. Okay, kid, I don't blame you, it's just that magic is amazing, but it can also easily cause harm to yourself. When you get to Hogwarts, you will have teachers to teach you. Now, let me take you to see the magical world. Professor McGonagall finished this sentence quickly, and then led Ryan towards the alley. Only then did Ryan notice that the place he was in turned out to be a deserted alley, but before he could think about it, Ryan ran after Professor McGonagall. This is a busy street with people coming and going. Professor McGonagall's fancy clothes attracted a lot of people's attention, but after paying attention for a while, they stopped paying attention. Everyone was very busy. Professor McGonagall took Ryan to a streetlight, where a family stood. The man was tall and thin, wearing a decent handmade suit, and his hair was meticulously combed. He looked like he was a successful man. The woman wore a pale pink dress and a ponytail, standing elegantly next to the man. There is a little girl in front of them with brown and fluffy hair. She glanced left and right from time to time, and then moved around. It was obvious that she was very nervous. "Good morning, Mr. Granger, Mrs. Granger, and Miss Granger." Professor McGonagall smiled and stepped forward to say hello. She had a good impression of this little witch who was full of curiosity. "Hello, Professor McGonagall." Mr. Granger also greeted, and Mrs. Granger nodded. "Good morning, Professor McGonagall." "Ah, is he a new little wizard like me?" Hermione quickly spotted Ryan following Professor McGonagall. "Oh, by the way, let me introduce this young wizard who is also new to the school, Ryan Zell." Professor McGonagall stepped aside, revealing Ryan behind him. "Hello." Ryan replied with a smile. "Hello, my name is Hermione Granger." Hermione also introduced herself. "Okay, let's go. There are a lot of things that need to be purchased today." After briefly introducing everyone, Professor McGonagall led them to a shabby bar. The sign read "The Leaky Cauldron," and the words were still glowing. Professor McGonagall pushed open the door that looked like it could be removed with a little force and walked in first. Then everyone followed in. The inside of the bar was as dilapidated as the outside. The dark roof, the greasy tabletop, the dim room and the strangely dressed drinkers all made Mr. and Mrs. Granger somewhat uncomfortable. Mr. Granger moved a little, and everything around him made him feel like he was the one who didn't fit in, even though that was the case. "Hey, Professor McGonagall, what do you want for today?" The middle-aged man with a wrinkled face wearing a bartender's uniform and standing at the bar asked. "Sorry, Tom, I need to take the new students to Diagon Alley." Professor McGonagall gestured. "Oh, it's the time of admission again, time," Tom said while wiping the wine glass in his hand. "Okay, Tom, I'll come back another time," Professor McGonagall replied. Then he turned to Ryan and the Granger family and said, "Follow me. Tom is the owner of this bar, and this bar is also the entrance to Diagon Alley. The wine here is good, and there is accommodation service here." Professor McGonagall took Ryan and the Granger family to the backyard of the bar, then pointed to the trash can nearby and said, "Remember this trash can, its position will not change. Count 3 blocks up from it, and then count 2 pieces across the board and hit them 3 times with your wand." Then, an archway appeared in the middle of the wall. Chapter 12. Welcome to Diagon Alley, where you can buy everything you need for school. But before that, you need to go to Gringotts to exchange some money. Professor McGonagall said to them with a smile, "Okay, okay. We have to hurry up." After Professor McGonagall finished speaking, she led them forward. There are 3 types of coins in the magic world: gold galleons, silver sickles, and copper nats. Their exchange ratio is 1 galleons is equal to 17 sickles, and 1 sickle is equal to 29 nats. How about, it's easy to remember. Professor McGonagall taught them science as they walked. Mr. Granger was still observing the strange shops on both sides of the street. After hearing Professor McGonagall's words, he couldn't help but said, "Professor, I don't mean to offend, but don't you think this conversion ratio is very strange? Mr. Granger, I know that your muggles use 10 or multiples of 10 to convert. In fact, we don't find this conversion troublesome. Instead, we find muggles' conversion to be very convoluted." Okay, sorry, Professor." Mr. Granger thought for a moment and thought that this was caused by cultural differences, so he quickly apologized. Professor McGonagall smiled and nodded, then continued walking forward. Gringotts is controlled by the goblins, which is equivalent to a bank for muggles. These goblins were defeated in the previous war, but in order to appease them, they were asked to mint gold coins for the wizards. Professor McGonagall said leisurely nothing happened, so he continued. Aren't you afraid that one day the goblins will rebel again? After all, they control the economic lifeline. Mr. Granger whispered again. However, Professor McGonagall was very powerful and still heard it. Mr. Granger, goblins don't rebel. That's impossible to say. Dad. Husband. Hermione and Mrs. Granger expressed their dissatisfaction with Mr. Granger at the same time. I really hope that the goblins will rebel. Ryan added nonchalantly. Mr. Granger was surprised. He and Professor McGonagall looked at each other, not knowing what to say for a moment. My family still lacks a few loyal house elves. Maybe they are a good choice. This is also the sentiment of many wizards. Ryan knew very well what the last Goblin Rebellion was about. There were not only magic books in the Death Eater stronghold, but also many secrets. The last Goblin Rebellion was more of a bloody feast than a Goblin Rebellion. In order to replenish the number of house elves in their family, the upper-class wizards pushed for the outbreak of the war. Countless elves were plundered during the war. Eventually, the goblins realized something was wrong. In order to cover up the real reason for the outbreak of the war and appease the goblins, the upper-level wizards gave the power of minting to the goblins. What is a house elf? Hermione asked curiously. You will know later, let's go to Gringotts now. Professor McGonagall knew that it was impossible for a young wizard from Muggles to accept the existence of this kind of slavery, so he changed the subject. Naturally, Ryan would not look down on Professor McGonagall and followed Professor McGonagall with a smile. The Grangers looked at each other and followed Professor McGonagall. But Mr. Granger's joyful mood when he first entered the magical world quickly cooled down. He realized that the magical world was not a fairy tale world. He began to wonder if sending his daughter into this unknown world was the right thing to do. However, this kid seems to know a lot of things and may be able to tell some stories. Mr. Granger couldn't help but look at Ryan's back. It didn't matter. He suddenly discovered that the suit on Ryan's body was also handmade and was quite valuable. But Mr. Granger did not see in him any trace of an aristocratic education. It's really strange. Whose child is this? Could it be the illegitimate child of someone else? Mr. Granger couldn't help but think. Little did Ryan know that Mr. Granger was becoming curious about his identity, and he was now being attacked by Hermione's chatterbox. How do you know about house elves? Is anyone in your family a wizard? Can you do magic? I mean, my parents are ordinary people who don't know magic. By the way, where are your parents? Why aren't they here today? Hearing this, Professor McGonagall felt a sudden change in her heart. She said how she always felt like she had forgotten something, and it turned out to be this. Hogwarts will provide a scholarship fund for poor families or orphans to complete their studies, but Professor McGonagall has not informed Ryan about this money at this time. In other words, she would have to mention it in front of the Grangers later. Will this child have a sense of inferiority? Merlin, how could I make such a mistake? Professor McGonagall kept blaming herself and thinking about solutions. Died 4 years ago. What? Hermione asked in disbelief, her eyes widening. My parents died 4 years ago, killed in a gang fight. Ryan said calmly. But it was this calm tone that shocked everyone, including Professor McGonagall, who turned to look at him. Hug, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Hermione reacted first. She blushed and apologized continuously, and even some tears appeared in the corners of her eyes. The little girl burst into tears. Don't worry so much. Maybe you don't know that there is a resurrection stone in the magic world. Ryan once again dropped a big bomb in a calm tone. Hermione opened her mouth, not knowing what to say. The Grangers were also shocked. After all, it was a resurrection stone. As soon as they heard the name, they knew it could resurrect people. Mr. Zell, I have to remind you that the resurrection stone is just a legend in the magical world. Professor McGonagall turned around and said. Ryan smiled and nodded to show that he understood. Okay, we're here. This is Gringotts. Professor McGonagall led everyone to a stop in front of a tall white house. The short and ugly goblin standing at the door ran over with short legs and said in his high-pitched voice, "Dear Professor McGonagall, Gringotts welcomes you. Of course, and you, if you bring gold instead of Muggle currency." Mr. Granger couldn't help but frown. He could feel the malice coming from the wizarding world more and more now. Mrs. Granger also squeezed her husband's arm, and Mr. Granger patted her hand on his arm, indicating that he would take care of it. "That's enough, this is the newly admitted little wizard, please get out of the way." Professor McGonagall couldn't help but become a little more stern, and the majesty accumulated through years of teaching was instantly revealed. Okay, please come in." The goblin trembled and moved away, making a gesture to invite in. Professor McGonagall snorted coldly and walked in first. Ryan followed by the Grangers. "Excuse me, we need to exchange currency here." Professor McGonagall walked to the innermost counter and knocked on the table. The goblin raised his wrinkled face, looked at Ryan and Hermione, and said slowly, "Oh, okay, it's time for the little wizard to enter school again." As he spoke, he took out one of the account books from the pile next to him and said while flipping through it, "The current exchange rate is 5 pounds to 1 galleons. Each little wizard can only exchange for a maximum of 200 coins a year." After turning it to the correct position, the goblin picked up the quill and dipped it in the ink bottle, and said, "Who comes first? By the way, you also need to bring your admission notice to me." Hermione looked at Ryan, who took a half step back, meaning you should go first. "This is my admission notice." Hermione took out a neatly folded piece of letter paper from her pocket, unfolded it and placed it on the counter. The goblin pinched it with his long and thick fingers, looked at it, and put it down again. "Miss Granger, how much do you want to exchange?" the goblin asked. 200 galleons, Mr. Granger said, then took out 10 100-pound coins from his wallet and placed them on the counter. Okay, 200 galleons. The goblin pointed out 200 galleons and weighed it on the scale. After the number was good, he casually threw the pound into the box behind him. "Please be careful, I will not be responsible for leaving the cabinet." The goblin put 200 galleons into a pocket and handed it to Mr. Granger. "What about you, little sir?" After completing Hermione's formalities, the goblin turned to ask Ryan again. "This child needs to take care of his student loan. This is Hogwarts instructions." With that said, Professor McGonagall took out a piece of paper and was about to put it on the counter, but was stopped by Ryan. "Zell, this is not the time to be strong, and this is not given to you, but will need to be repaid in the future," Professor McGonagall said, thinking that Ryan did not accept the funds out of his own pride. "Professor McGonagall, I have my own money." As he said that, he threw the seamless stretch bag on his waist on the counter. "Mr. Goblin, is there an exchange limit for gold and gems?" Ryan always had a smile on his face. "Of course not." After hearing Ryan's words, the goblin became slightly interested. He picked up the bag on the counter, weighed it, then turned the bag over to pour out the contents. This pocket is not big, and the goblin did not consider the factor of the seamless stretch bag, because just now Professor McGonagall wanted to apply for a student loan for the little wizard. But the reality was beyond everyone's expectation. A lot of gold and gems fell out of his pocket, covering the entire counter. Fortunately, the goblin reacted quickly, otherwise some of it would have fallen to the ground. "Oh, look at this little cutie." The goblin picked up a golden bead and said, "By the way, my name is Kabi." "Hello, what is your name?" Kabi immediately changed his face after seeing Ryan's money. Chapter 13. Ryan Zell. The plain voice sounded again. "Okay, Mr. Zell, we will handle the exchange business for you right now." Kabi turned around and shouted loudly, "Hulu, come here quickly and test the purity of these gems for me." Kabi first weighed the gold, and then wrote a few things in the account book. Seeing that Hulu had not completed the purity measurement, he began to promote Gringotts Treasury Service. "Dear Mr. Zell, do you need to open a vault at Gringotts? You know, this is Gringotts, and your wealth will be best kept here." However, Ryan clearly refused, but Kabi was still chattering and selling like crazy. In the end, Ryan still did not accept the proposal to open the treasury in Gringotts, but left Gringotts with 3,900 gold galleons in his eyes with a lot of reluctance. "Zell, where did you get all this money?" Professor McGonagall asked curiously. The Grangers also raised their ears, ready to hear the absurdities of the upper class. Just now, Mr. Granger told Granger and Hermione his speculation. The large amount of wealth once again deepened Mr. Granger's speculation that Ryan was an illegitimate child. Ryan smiled and said, 3 holes left by the Death Eaters. Professor McGonagall originally wanted to say something, but after hearing this, she immediately shut up and just led everyone forward. Hermione glanced at Ryan, and her sixth sense told her that Ryan was not telling the truth, but Professor McGonagall's silence also made her feel that this matter was a little weird, but she silently wrote down the word Death Eater. Mr. Granger was silent. He thought that Ryan was the illegitimate son of some noble family. Okay, let's go buy a wand first. It's a necessity for magic. You all can't wait. Professor McGonagall said with a smile. But when she saw the calm look on Ryan's face, she instantly thought that Ryan had already had his own wand and had successfully cast a spell. Hermione looked excited and urged, then let's go quickly. Where should we buy it? Ollivander's wand shop sells the best wands in Europe. Every little wizard can find a wand of his own there. Professor McGonagall said cheerfully that she liked the little girl Hermione very much. Ollivander's wand shop is very shabby and small. Once a few people stand inside, there is almost no room left. In addition to the counter, inside the store are slender boxes stacked to the ceiling, which contain wands. Hermione was a little nervous now. She was worried about what if she couldn't find a wand of her own, would she be expelled from Hogwarts? Hello, Minerva, cold wood, dragon heartstring, 12 inches long, perfect for transfiguration. A thin, grey-haired old man came out of the corner, his eyes twinkling in the dim wand shop. Thank you, Ollivander, I'm glad you still remember it so clearly. Professor McGonagall smiled gently at Ollivander. Okay, let's postpone the reminiscing. I think the little wizards can't wait. Who comes first? Ollivander asked kindly, holding a soft ruler in his hand. Ladies first. Ryan smiled and stepped back. He was now curious as to whether he could get a second wand since he already had one, so he let Hermione choose first. A gentlemanly young man, very nice. What is your name, please? The last words were addressed to Hermione. Hermione, Hermione Granger. Hermione felt uncomfortable all over because the tape ruler kept squirming on her body, like a caterpillar. Excuse me, what's the use of measuring these? I mean, can it make it normal? Hermione asked with some difficulty. Ollivander was searching for wands everywhere. After hearing Hermione's words, he replied, every wand sold by Ollivander must be the most suitable for the owner. These are all to find a wand that is more suitable for you. Magic wand. Okay, let's try this one. He said, handing a fiery red wand to Hermione. After Hermione got it, she waved it gently and saw a rainbow appearing above everyone's heads. No, not this one, come on, try this one again. Ollivander roughly took the wand away from Hermione's hand and handed another one over. Before Hermione could react, the wand in her hand was changed to a different one. Seeing that Hermione was still stunned, Ollivander urged, swing again. Hermione did so, and a beam of light shot out from the tip of her wand. Well, great! Grapevine, dragon's heartstring, 10 3/4 inches, suitable for a wizard who can achieve great things. I dare say you can make a difference, Miss Granger. Courtesy 7 galleons. Hermione was so happy when she heard this, she counted 7 gold coins and put them on the counter. Next is you, Mr. Gentleman, by the way, what's your name? Ryan, Ryan Zell. Ryan replied, but Mr. Ollivander, in fact, I have already received a wand, so can I buy another one? After Ollivander heard this, he glanced at Ryan in surprise, then turned his head and looked at Professor McGonagall strangely. Hermione also looked at Ryan curiously. Isn't he a muggle wizard like me? How about a magic wand? Hermione thought silently. Professor McGonagall and Ollivander had a quick conversation, and then Ollivander said, Mr. Zell, can you bring your wand over and let me take a look? Ryan hesitated for a moment and handed it over. As soon as Ollivander got it in his hand, his eyes widened and he murmured to himself, how is this possible? This kind of wand cannot exist. This is really a great discovery. Mr. Ollivander, is something wrong? Hermione asked curiously. Ollivander paused for a moment, and then said incredulously, the elder tree, the Thestral's tail feathers, 13 inches long, each represent death. To be honest, logically speaking, this wand will not exist in the world, but he does exist. What? Hermione asked. Elderberry. The Elder Wand, one of the 3 legendary Deathly Hallows, is made of elderberry. The Thestral is a magical creature that can only be seen by those who have seen death. This is really incredible. By the way, I have to mark it down, this is a rare example. With that said, Ollivander rushed open the door leading to the backyard of the shop and abandoned everyone. Here comes the magic wand. Ryan stretched out his hand, and a wand broke through the glass from behind the door and flew into Ryan's hand. Then Ryan put the wand into the small pocket of his clothes specially designed for storing wands. Damn it, where's the wand? Take it out quickly. Do you know what a great invention this is? With it, wizards will have more types of wands. Don't you want to make some contribution to the wizarding world? Ollivander rushed out and roared. It seems that the wand cannot be purchased. Let's go buy something else, Professor McGonagall. Ryan ignored Ollivander, who was falling into madness, and said to Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall was also a little dissatisfied with Ollivander's appearance. There was a limit to how he liked wands. How could this be appropriate? So she just agreed, okay, let's go. But who knew that Ollivander actually grabbed Ryan's sleeve and said in a slightly begging tone, Mr. Zell, I'm sorry for what I did just now. A wand I've never seen before allowed me to enter. Mysterious. But at least let me take another look, right here, this is the greatest discovery. I never thought that a wand can go to the extreme in one direction. This is simply impossible. I'm sorry, Mr. Ollivander. Ryan didn't listen to his explanation at all. I'm going to buy some other things now, please let it go. Then just let me take another look, just one look. Are you threatening me? Ryan showed a dangerous smile, and a hint of murderous intent began to appear in his eyes. No, this is not a threat. Let me take another look. I can let you choose a wand from me. No matter what he said, Ollivander was still unwilling to let go. Ryan sighed, then his left hand instantly grabbed Ollivander's hand holding his robe, and his right hand instantly pulled out the wand and shouted loudly, Avada! Ryan! Professor McGonagall screamed, and then quickly took away Ryan's wand. How could you, you are really crazy. Professor McGonagall was extremely angry. She originally thought Ryan was pitiful, but now she only felt angry. I will report this matter to Principal Dumbledore truthfully. Now, go out immediately and buy what you need. Professor McGonagall's words were predictably angry and harsh. Ryan smiled and Ollivander took his hands away from his clothes. He was now a little frightened by Ryan's spell just now. The Granger family looked at each other, they still didn't know what the half-spell that Ryan just meant. But seeing as Professor McGonagall is so angry, it's probably not a good spell. Ryan shrugged and walked out with a smile. Next came the Granger family. Hermione pulled Ryan and kept asking him what the curse was and why it made Professor McGonagall so angry. After everyone left, Professor McGonagall pulled Ollivander up from where he was lying on the ground. Sorry, Ollivander, that kid. Professor McGonagall said. I know that I was wrong in this matter after all. The wand is the wizard's life. I shouldn't have been so reckless. Ollivander said apologetically, please don't embarrass that child. Believe me, at that time there is no magic fluctuation in the wand at all. Chapter 14. After coming out of the wand shop, Professor McGonagall's expression was not very good looking, and she softened somewhat towards Hermione, but when it came to Ryan, she had a completely cold face. But Ryan didn't care at all, or it could be said that Ryan had caused this. After all, the admission notice made him panic. Although he is now strong enough to protect himself, if he can live a good life, who wants to be that rat that keeps escaping? The group fell silent, and the Grangers looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Hermione also noticed that there seemed to be some conflicts between Ryan and Professor McGonagall, and stopped pestering Ryan with questions. This actually made Ryan breathe a sigh of relief. 4 years of living alone had made Ryan develop a taciturn character. Okay, here is the bookstore. You can buy all the books you need for school here. Professor McGonagall stopped and said as if he was relieved. Upon hearing this, Ryan was about to go in and buy books, but was stopped by Professor McGonagall. You guys go in first, Mr. Zell and I still have something to say. Professor McGonagall said to the Granger family with a smile. Mr. Granger looked at Professor McGonagall, and then began to invite Granger and Hermione to go in and choose books. Hermione had almost no resistance to books and rushed into the bookstore with cheers. Mr. Zell, what are you thinking? Do you know the consequences of using the unforgivable curse in this place? Professor McGonagall whispered sternly. Ryan looked at Professor McGonagall and replied, I can cast the death curse silently and without a wand. Then Ryan opened the door and entered the bookstore with a smile on his face. Professor McGonagall sighed and followed suit. She understood what Ryan meant, and it meant that if you really wanted to kill Ollivander, there was no need to go to such trouble. But what Professor McGonagall meant was to remind Ryan to pay attention to the fact that black magic can corrode people's will, because releasing black magic requires strong hatred and murderous intent as a driving force. After Ryan entered the bookstore, Hermione had already selected the books she needed, and was currently holding a copy of History of Magic and reading it with relish. When she saw Ryan coming in, Hermione raised her head and took a step or two back. Ryan noticed Hermione's condition, smiled and nodded, thinking to himself, it seems that she already knows what Death Eaters represent. I'm sorry, can you give me a copy of all the books you have? Ryan's voice was not loud, but it was like thunder in the ears of the store manager of Flourish and Blott's bookstore. Kid, what did you just say? A copy of them all would be a lot of money. The store manager said to Ryan with a smile. He thought Ryan was joking. Ryan silently handed the seamless stretch bag to the store manager and said, Are these enough? The store manager glanced at Ryan suspiciously, then opened it and was instantly blinded by the huge amount of gold galleons inside. That's enough. All the books add up to about 1,700 galleons. Please wait a moment. I'll prepare them for you. After the store manager finished speaking, he opened his mouth and went to the back. Ryan smacked his lips, glanced at the store manager's back, and couldn't help but sigh that money is better spent. Soon, the store manager came out with a box and put it on the counter. Here are all the books. The favor is 1,762 galleons. The change is waived. This traceless stretching box is also given to you. The store manager smiled so hard that he couldn't see his eyes. This order was worth a normal month's profit, not counting these 2 months. After all, it was the peak enrollment period. Taking the box and a traceless stretch bag from the store manager, Ryan transferred the corresponding amount of galleons into it. The store manager looked at it, and the smile on his face became thicker. He quickly held Ryan's hand and said, From now on, you will be a distinguished guest of Flourishes and Blott's bookstore, and you will get a 10% discount on all books you buy. By the way, if you have anything else to say, if you want a book, you can send it via OWL. Hermione was dumbfounded as she watched. Although 200 galleons seemed like a lot, after purchasing the required items, there were basically only 50 or 60 galleons left, which still had to be kept for a year. So Hermione bought 3 extra books. When she suddenly heard that Ryan had bought all the books, she suddenly felt sour in her mouth. If there are any newly released books in the future, please send them to me as soon as possible. After hearing what Ryan said, the store manager was so happy that he wanted to hold Ryan's hand and dance on the spot. Finally, Ryan and the Granger family left Flourish and Blott's bookstore with a cordial farewell from the store manager. What about clothes next? Ryan asked. Hermione looked at the list and nodded. Professor McGonagall was waiting outside and came over when she saw them coming out. It seems that you have gained a lot. Professor McGonagall noticed the box in Ryan's hand and asked. Yes, Professor, Ryan bought all the books, all of them. Hermione exaggerated. I always believe that knowledge is a necessary condition for the existence of a wizard. Ryan said calmly. After hearing this, Professor McGonagall nodded and said, Maybe you will be assigned to Ravenclaw. I believe you will gain something there. Maybe I will go to Slytherin. Ryan made a small joke. After hearing this, Professor McGonagall said, It is difficult for young Muggle wizards to enter Slytherin, and it is easy to be squeezed out after entering. Those purebloods, sigh. Ryan smiled and shrugged, not paying attention, but he always believed that strength was the foundation of a wizard. The Grangers were once again worried. After all, these were words coming from the mouth of a school professor. After measuring the data, Madame Malkin smiled and asked them to come back in 2 hours to pick up the clothes. So they went to buy dragon skin gloves, crucibles, telescopes and other necessities. Ryan also bought an extra small pocket sewn from dragon skin, and then Ryan cast a traceless stretching spell on it, transferring all his belongings into it. Here, maybe this will make it easier for you. Ryan handed Hermione the seamless stretch bag he had replaced. Hermione blushed and didn't know whether to take it for a moment, but she finally took it. The Grangers were exhausted from carrying so many things. Although they kept up with nutrition, they had not exercised for a long time. However, after putting everything into the seamless stretch pocket, Mr. Granger shook the bag and said in surprise, "This is very strange, why has it become lighter?" Because the levitating spell is cast on the bag, which is a spell that can make objects float, which offsets part of the weight to a certain extent. After hearing Mr. Granger's doubts, Ryan replied. The group of people then came to the Ela Owl shop, and Ryan took a fancy to an eagle owl with the blood of a scooter. Because it has a trace of the blood of magical creatures, the price is more than twice as expensive as other owls. Hermione looked at it for a long time, and finally decided not to buy a pet after Professor McGonagall's persuasion that Hogwarts has a public owl. Finally, after a few people picked up their clothes at Madame Malkin's robe shop, it meant that the trip to Diagon Alley was coming to an end. Okay, you have bought all the necessities for school. Here are your tickets. Professor McGonagall handed over 2 golden tickets. On September 1st, King's Cross Station, 9 1/4. Don't forget platform 3, otherwise you will have to wait another year to go to school. After both Ryan and Hermione made it clear, Professor McGonagall used disapparation and left. Wait a minute, is she teleporting? Mr. Granger exclaimed as he watched Professor McGonagall disappear before his eyes. Apparition, a spell used to move instantly, but to be honest, it's quite uncomfortable. Ryan said, frowning and expressing his dissatisfaction with the uncomfortable feeling. I'll take my leave here. Ryan said politely, and then he wanted to wave his wand and disapparate away from here. Wait a minute, Ryan. Maybe we can practice magic together this summer. I mean, I don't know where you live yet. Hermione asked with a blush. After all, she was a little embarrassed to ask a strange boy for his address, but she didn't want to give up such an opportunity to communicate with similar people. After hearing this, Ryan smiled bitterly and said, I might scare you to death if I tell you where I live. Hermione gave him a quizzical look. Clear Street. Those words made Mr. Granger feel like he was facing a formidable enemy. He quickly pulled Hermione and his wife behind him, but suddenly he realized something. Mr. Granger smiled apologetically and said sorry. But he had no intention of letting his guard down. Ryan smiled at Mr. Granger, then bent down and said, farewell. Ryan, maybe you can write me a letter during the summer vacation. These were the last words Ryan heard before he disapparated. Hermione, you'd better stay away from that kid. Mr. Granger suddenly felt that he had better keep a closer eye on his daughter, not just the kid from Clear Street. But Mr. Granger didn't know that this was just Hermione's joy of suddenly finding someone of the same kind after a few years. Hermione, to be honest, after seeing the magical world today, I think that maybe the magical world is not that kind to outsiders. Have you really decided to go to the so-called Hogwarts? Mr. Granger, he spoke to Hermione seriously. Hermione ignored her father's words and said seriously, of course, I want to go, and I bought a lot of books about the history of the magical world today. I will try my best to understand the magical world. Looking at his daughter who wanted to be strong, Mr. Granger didn't say much. He just smiled and touched Hermione's head and said with a smile, what do you want to eat tonight to celebrate your first entry into the magical world? Then let's have some cake, okay? Hermione's eyes lit up. Because her father is a dentist, Hermione's daily life has very few sugary desserts. Mr. Granger thought for a moment and said, only a little. You're amazing, Dad. Hermione gave her father a big hug. Mr. Granger burst into laughter. Chapter 15. After saying goodbye to the Granger family, Ryan also apparat into the forest near his home. He first built a birdhouse on the top of the tree in his tree hole as a home for pies. After setting up his owl's nest, Ryan entered the tree hole with a smile and came to his cabin. First, he took off his suit and threw it on the ground casually. Then I ate something casually and went to bed. I haven't gone shopping for a long time, and today I suddenly ran around for a long time, which really exhausted Ryan. On the other side, Professor McGonagall hurried to the principal's office after returning to Hogwarts. Hey, Minerva, would you like some licorice wands? I just found out today that this snack is so delicious. It seems that it's not unreasonable for the little wizard to like it. After saying that, Dumbledore handed one over. The dismantled licorice wand arrived in front of Professor McGonagall. I have no intention of talking to you about how delicious these snacks are right now. To be honest, my heart is in a mess right now. Professor McGonagall spoke very fast, and Professor Dumbledore also heard her inner uneasiness. Dumbledore took apart the licorice wand in his hand, took a bite and said, "Minerva, speak slowly, believe me, things are not that bad. That's because you didn't see what the child did." Professor McGonagall was so anxious that she almost cried. "That's enough. We are talking about the child now, and you are still thinking about eating snacks." Professor McGonagall yelled when she saw that Dumbledore was still trying to get snacks. The portrait behind Dumbledore was also awakened and began to make a noise. "Minerva, you just talk about the child, but the key point is what did the child do?" Ms. Devant's portrait said. She was once the attending physician at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and later became the headmaster of Hogwarts. Ms. Derwent's words seemed to be full of magic, causing Professor McGonagall to gradually quiet down. Professor McGonagall calmed down and began to talk about Ryan's every move. Of course, he told it in the most objective way. "Well done, to be honest, I have long been unhappy with that old lunatic Ollivander. They are all lunatics." An old man in rags with a goatee shouted. "It's very satisfying, it's very satisfying." Before he could finish his words, the other principals covered his mouth. "Okay, Raphael, we are all dead, and now Dumbledore is the principal of Hogwarts." Ms. Devant obviously knew about the mess between Raphael and Ollivander. Back then, Raphael found an extremely precious piece of material, but it was stolen by that generation of Ollivander to make a wand. Back then, Raphael rushed up with the wand and cast a killing curse. Even if it didn't hit, that's it. So Rafflo felt very happy when he heard what happened today. Dumbledore touched his beard, but his hand subconsciously touched the snacks placed aside. Bang! Professor McGonagall took out her wand and hit Dumbledore's hand that touched the snack. "Ha ha ha ha, don't worry, Minerva. It's just a timid hedgehog who keeps curling up, and maybe he already has a key that can open the hard vault." Dumbledore picked up a multi-flavored bean. "Put it in your mouth and say." Then Dumbledore spat out the braised beans again. "Why does it taste like liver? It's so bitter." Dumbledore quickly stuffed some sweets into his mouth to get rid of the bitter taste. But when the candy reaches the mouth, it turns out to be bitter. "Albus, I think you should watch your mouth. I've read a lot of Muggle research recently. Elderly people should not eat too many sweets. It's not good for their health." Dumbledore immediately realized that the bitter candy must have been the handiwork of Professor McGonagall in front of him. "Okay, if I don't tell you this, what are you going to do about Harry?" When faced with the question of a savior, Dumbledore also changed his previous nonchalant attitude and said thoughtfully, "Now let's send the notice like this. If the Dursleys still don't agree in the end, I will ask Hagrid to go there. Let me go, Albus. I advised you 10 years ago that you should not leave the child to those two muggles. Minerva, after all, they are relatives, and it would be inappropriate for you to go when the time comes. After all, someone needs to shock the Dursleys, and only Hagrid, a giant of blood, can do that." Dumbledore thought in his heart. "Okay, now that you have a plan. I have to go. I have to send another admission notice to those two muggles tomorrow." "Really, don't you need galleons for the written and ink paper?" Professor McGonagall's voice became farther and farther away, and Dumbledore sat behind his desk with a downcast face, not knowing what he was thinking. The portraits behind him began to make noise again, for both Ryan and Harry. The next day, Ryan sat up from the bed and stretched. Once people go to bed after being tired, they will feel that the sleep is very comfortable. Just washing and eating breakfast in his pajamas, Ryan changed his clothes and started reading. As soon as he picked up the book, Ryan put it down again. Pace hadn't been given food yet, so he almost forgot about it. "Pace, come down for breakfast." Ryan stood under the tree and shouted to the birdhouse on the tree. But there was no sound in the trees. This made Ryan very strange. Logically speaking, the owl would not stray too far from its owner. But soon, Ryan understood where Pace had gone. Pace held a snow-white rabbit in his paws, then swooped down and threw it in front of Ryan, and finally folded his wings and occupied the branch. "Rabbit? This is a rare thing. I haven't seen rabbits for a long time since I killed them all 2 years ago." Ryan exclaimed in surprise. After picking up the rabbit, Ryan asked Pace to eat owl nuts. However, Pace didn't even look at it, and pointed his little paw at the rabbit in Ryan's hand. "Okay, it's really the other way around. You are the master," Ryan muttered. After taking Pace into the house, Ryan began to deal with the rabbit. After learning magic, everything becomes simple. Just wave the magic wand and everything is done. In the end, Ryan and Paige ate half of the rabbit each. Paige, give this letter to Hermione. Ryan took out a letter and handed it to Paige. Paige glanced at Ryan, proudly grabbed the letter and flew out. Just now, Ryan cast a passage spell on Paige, which allowed Paige to freely enter and exit the magic circle of the hut. At first, Ryan didn't plan to get in touch with the trio, but later he discovered that Hermione looked almost exactly like the one in the movies and TV shows. In this case, don't blame me for being rude. Ryan thought so. After seeing Paige flying out, Ryan went back to reading. He was looking at the first grade textbook he just bought yesterday, which he had never read before. Although the Death Eaters left behind many classics, there was no such basic knowledge at all. Ryan recalled that he had practiced black magic without knowing anything before, and he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He was really lucky if he didn't die. After a while, Ryan noticed some movement in the birdhouse. But Paige had just left. Even if he had a trace of the blood of the speeding bird, he definitely couldn't be so fast. As soon as Ryan went out, a black shadow fell from the sky. He was so frightened that Ryan almost took out his wand and fired a thunderbolt explosion spell. After taking a closer look, it turned out that Flourishes and Blot's bookstore had sent new books. Cuckoo, the owl standing on the tree began to cry out dissatisfied. Okay, 18 galleons, right? That's really expensive. I'll have to see whose masterpiece it is later. Ryan complained as he took out 18 galleons from his pocket and put it on the owl's body. In the pocket. After getting the money, the owl flew away. Ryan watched the owl slowly fly away, then lowered his head and began to unpack it. There were 2 books in total. Ryan picked up one of them. On the cover was a handsome and well-groomed portrait. After he noticed that Ryan picked up the book, he immediately smiled brightly, showing his white teeth. Traveling with the Vampire, by Gilderoy Lockhart, alas. Ryan's hand holding the book dropped weakly. He thought it was someone's work, but it turned out to be this liar. The second book was also written by Lockhart, and Ryan didn't even want to read the title. After taking it to the study and putting it away, Ryan stopped caring about it. In fact, you can still learn a lot from these books. After all, they are the personal experiences of other wizards, and Lockhart's writing skills are also good, with ups and downs in the content. But no matter what, I am an idiot. Soon, Paige came back and brought Hermione's letter. Ryan picked up the letter that Paige had thrown on the table. He was about to open it, but Paige stopped him. Paige kept shouting coo, which made Ryan confused. Paige seemed to know that his expression was a bit unclear, so he bit into Ryan's clothes and pulled them out. After walking outside, Paige flew up to his birdhouse and kept going in and out. At this moment, Ryan understood instantly that it was Paige who was making a noise that another owl had entered his house. Okay, Paige, I'll build a new owl house right now. If other owls come in the future, just let it stay there. Ryan said dumbfounded. Hearing this, Paige nodded with satisfaction and then entered the birdhouse. Ryan looked at Paige who had a bad temper and smiled. A person's life is still interesting when he has a pet. Ryan felt that living alone for the past 4 years was really stupid, so he didn't know how to keep a pet. After returning to the house, Ryan opened the letter sent by Hermione, then called Paige who had just entered the birdhouse to rest, sent a letter and left. Chapter 16. It's mid-August, and the weather in London is already a little hot, but even on the hottest day, it's only around 25 to 6 degrees Celsius. Today, Ryan is busy crying his home. Although he usually uses the desk-alling curse to cry in his home, there will be several guests coming today. After Ryan and Hermione broke up, he wrote to Hermione frequently. In the letter, Ryan once said that he had a library at home. As soon as Hermione, who loves books, heard this, she wanted to take a look. However, after Mr. Granger heard about it, Hermione was not allowed to come. After all, this was Clear Street, the most famous slum in London. However, after Ryan finally wrote to tell Mr. Granger that his home was in the forest, not on the street, Mr. Granger agreed. On the one hand, Hermione had been annoying him for a long time, and on the other hand, he also wanted to see what the home of this boy who wrote to Hermione every day looked like as soon as they separated. Early that morning, Mr. Granger put the pistol in the drawer into the car, and then, at Hermione's urging, entered the National Park near Clear Street. It was only after communicating with Mr. Granger that Ryan learned that this forest was a national park. Okay, I think we should get down. We need to walk the rest of the way. Mr. Granger opened the car door and jumped out of the car first. Mr. Granger, good morning. Ryan slowly walked out of the forest. He was wearing light and breathable hiking clothes. After all, wearing a suit in the forest is the stupidest thing to do. Not only Ryan, the Granger family also wore mountaineering clothes, and they were family clothes. Quickly shrink. A spell hits Mr. Granger's car, and the car gradually shrinks to the size of a toy car as the Granger family stares in shock. Can it be changed back? Mr. Granger was silent for a moment and then asked. Of course. Ryan picked up the car and put it in his traceless stretch bag. Let's go, my house is not too far from here. Ryan waved and then led the way. Hermione obviously didn't change her mind for a while and asked, speaking of which, what if such a big car becomes so small and unnecessary material? That's not the case. The quality is still the same before and after the spell is cast. Ryan replied from the front without looking back. Then this is even more wrong. Since the mass remains unchanged, it means that the number of atoms also remains unchanged, but the volume has obviously become smaller, which means that the gap between the atoms has become smaller. But, how is the magic? What about solving the molecular repulsion between particles? It was obvious that Hermione's knowledge far exceeded her current age. Mr. and Mrs. Granger looked at each other and shrugged. Having such a studious daughter is also stressful. They are just dentists, so how do they know this? Whenever Hermione ran up to him with a book and asked him a question, he wanted to bang his head against the wall. But he couldn't do this. He had to understand Hermione's problem well so that he could establish an image of an all-powerful father in Hermione's heart. However, as Hermione grew older, the questions she asked became more and more difficult, making it difficult for Mr. Granger to respond. In the end, Mr. Granger could only say helplessly, I don't know, maybe it will be in the book. From then on, Hermione began to read books like crazy. Magic power temporarily offsets the force between particles. It isolates particles one after another so that they no longer produce interaction forces. But because of the need to offset the force, magic power will continue to be consumed during this period. So, say, no spell is permanent unless you continue to provide magic or what? Ryan's words obviously attracted Hermione's attention. It's nothing, you think I didn't say anything. Ryan smiled. Another way is to directly change the rules and forcefully reverse matter. But the power required by this method is so powerful that it is useless to say it now. Humph. Hermione snorted coldly. She was very dissatisfied with Ryan's answer. First it whets people's appetite, and then it leaves it there without saying anything. What a bad guy. Hermione couldn't help but curse in her heart. No one spoke for the rest of the journey. Hermione was holding her breath and didn't want to talk to Ryan. The Grangers were attracted by the scene in the forest. Half an hour later, amid the screams of the Granger family, Ryan led them to his cabin. Welcome to my home, welcome you all. Ryan bowed and said very gentlemanly. Mr. Granger looked at the trees around him and saw no sign of a house. By the way, take these. As he said that, Ryan took out several exquisite brooches from his pocket and handed them to the Grangers. This is the pass for my family's defense circle. Don't lose it. If you lose it, you must not step into the circle, otherwise it will be very miserable. You must remember it. Ryan warned at first, but felt that it was almost meaningless, so he added at the end. The Grangers seemed to be frightened by Ryan's words, and quickly pinned the brooch to their chests. Follow me. After speaking, Ryan took the lead and entered a tree, which made Mr. Granger wipe his eyes fiercely. He even wondered if he was hallucinating. Hermione followed Ryan into the tree. Her daughter's disappearance made Mr. Granger no longer suspicious, and she took Mrs. Granger's hand and walked in together. Your place is really nice. Mr. Granger couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the decoration that came into view. More than just nice, everything here is expensive, but not precious. This made Mr. Granger interested. After all, Ryan was just a homeless kid living on Clear Street without a father or mother. Where did he get so much money? After thinking about it, Mr. Granger asked directly. Mrs. Granger pinched Mr. Granger's arm, as if to reproach him for his forthrightness. Is this the case? There was originally a batch of treasures here. I think some wizard must have left a way out for himself. However, it seems that this wizard gentleman was not very lucky. Anyway, it was cheaper for me in the end, and I sold it a little, in exchange for some money. Ryan said with a smile, knowing that Mr. Granger would definitely ask this question. And the magic circle here was set up by the wizards before. However, they didn't seem to consider that no one would come for a long time. Maybe they didn't care about this stronghold, so the defensive magic circle was stopped before I arrived. But then I fixed them up because, you know, the yard isn't safe without a fence. Mr. Granger nodded. The sanctity of private property had been firmly established since the Bill of Rights. By the way, Ryan, you said in your letter that your home has a huge library. Is it true? Take me to see it quickly. The little girl was obviously not interested in what Ryan said just now, and quickly urged Ryan. Take her to read a book. Of course, please follow me. Ryan said with a smile, and then led the Granger family to his library. As soon as Hermione entered the room, she was shocked by the sight before her. Tall bookshelves were filled with books. There was about 1 meter of space between each row of bookshelves, and the number of bookshelves was almost too numerous to count. This is really incredible. Hermione stared at Ryan with wide eyes. I thought you were lying in the letter. Ryan bent down and said with a smile, a gentleman would never lie to a beautiful lady. Mr. Granger raised an eyebrow. There's something wrong with this kid. He coughed twice, as if to remind Ryan of his presence. Okay, let me introduce this place to you. Ryan showed his sense of ownership and began to introduce. Most of the books here are copied by me from the London Library. Only the 30 bookshelves at the back are books about magic. Some of them originally existed here, and the other part, as you know, came from Diagon Alley. Flourish and blot books. As he said that, Ryan sighed. His heritage in just a few years was still not comparable to that of those wizard families. Wait, the library at Hogwarts seems quite big, maybe. Ryan thought of this and secretly made a decision. Now that he can move the London Library, the Hogwarts Library is naturally a problem. After hearing this, Hermione exclaimed and ran towards the bookshelf. After seeing this, Ryan just smiled, then turned to Mr. Granger and said, perhaps you can visit my wine cellar. Originally, Ryan did not have a wine cellar in his house, but after he discovered that he had collected a lot of good wine from the Charlie gang, Ryan decided to build a wine cellar for himself. Over the past 2 years, Ryan has also collected a lot of good wine. Creak. The wine cellar door made a heart-wrenching sound because it had not been opened for a long time. Welcome to Ryan Wine Cellar. The wine here may be new, but I think when I reach the age where I can drink, the wine here will be just right. Wow, there are some good bottles of wine here. Mr. Granger picked up a bottle of wine and observed it carefully, and then said. Perhaps you can bring a few bottles back later. Ryan smiled mischievously. Eaters have short mouths, and takers have short hands. This is not just talk. Mrs. Granger kept winking at Mr. Granger, but at this time, Mr. Granger only had eyes for the good wine in his hand. Okay, Ryan, thank you very much. This bottle, and this bottle. Well, this bottle seems to be good too. Mr. Granger began to pick out the wine to take back later, regardless of the image. Mrs. Granger's face grew colder every time Mr. Granger chose a bottle of wine. Ryan couldn't help but worry about Mr. Granger's unknown fate. Mom and Dad. Ryan. Hermione's voice came, interrupting Mr. Granger's desire to choose another bottle of wine. So you were here. Hermione appeared at the cellar door. Dad, what are you doing? Hermione, who noticed Mr. Granger choosing a drink, raised her eyebrows and asked. Chapter 17. In the end, Mr. Granger was left with only one bottle of wine. He sat dejectedly on the sofa in the living room, and then watched the steak run into the pot on its own, and then flew to the dinner plate after being cooked. Magic is really convenient. Mrs. Granger couldn't help but sigh. Mrs. Granger is also a dentist and she is Mr. Granger's assistant. Besides, she was also busy with housework after work, which made her a little tired. After Mrs. Granger finished speaking, she glanced at Hermione, who was fascinated by the book. Auntie, the little wizard is not allowed to use magic outside of school. There is something called trace silk in the little wizard's wand. As long as there are magic fluctuations around you, the Ministry of Magic will sense it. Ryan noticed Mrs. Granger's movements and came to Hermione's rescue. Moreover, under Ryan's sweet words, the original titles of Mr. Granger and Mrs. Granger have evolved into Uncle and Auntie. Zongxi? Don't you even know where the little wizard is? This is too disrespectful of the little wizard's privacy. Mr. Granger said thoughtfully, touching his chin that had just shaved this morning. Yes, Uncle. In addition, because Zongxi cannot sense who is releasing the magic, so as long as there are magic fluctuations around the little muggle wizard, the Ministry of Magic will sense it. And the little wizard who comes from a wizarding family there is no such obsession because their families are allowed to practice magic. Ryan picked up the teacup placed on the coffee table, took a sip of tea, and said slowly. That means that all the magic you are releasing now has been sensed by the Ministry of Magic. Mr. Granger said with some horror. If what Ryan said is true, then they are already within the monitoring range of the Ministry of Magic at this time, which makes Mr. Granger, who has always believed in freedom, a little difficult to accept. That's not the case. If you want to detect the casting of an underage wizard, there must be a hard and fast rule, that is, there are traces in the wand, but there is no trace in my wand. Ryan took out his wand and handed it to Granger. Gentlemen. But Mr. Granger obviously remembered what Ollivander said that day and did not want to touch the wand that represented death. Seeing that Mr. Granger had no intention of taking it, Ryan put it away again and continued, and the spells cast by young wizards who have not yet entered school are not included in this, because they have not yet entered Hogwarts. Strictly speaking, if they are not considered to be members of the wizarding world, this law will naturally not be able to control them. In addition, I have set up an isolation circle in this room. If you cast a spell here, Zuzi will not have any reaction. After saying that, Ryan winked at Hermione. Just as Ryan was speaking, Hermione raised her head and listened to the common sense in the magical world that she didn't know. Looking at Hermione's curious baby look, Ryan suddenly had the idea to write a book called Common Sense You Must Know When You First Enter the Magical World, so as to provide some common sense to Muggle wizards who have just entered the magical world. This might be a good idea. Ryan thought. Perhaps it is because I have never paid much attention to Muggles. There is no book in the magical world that introduces the magical world to Muggle wizards, but there are quite a few books that introduce the Muggle world to wizards. Ryan, Ryan! Hermione's yelling voice brought Ryan back to his senses. What are you thinking about? Looking at Hermione in front of him, Ryan said what he had just thought, and immediately received the approval of the Granger family. This is a good idea. I think it will definitely sell well. Mr. Granger made a fist with his right hand and struck the palm of his left hand, vowing. Ryan glanced at Mr. Granger without leaving any trace, not embarrassed to tell the truth. The fact is that this book may not even sell 50 copies a year. The number of young wizards who enroll every year is really too small, and the young wizards who come from wizarding families have to be removed here, and it is still a matter of debate whether to buy the young wizards who come from mixed blood backgrounds. But what does this have to do with Ryan? He just thinks it's a bit fun to do it. Okay, lunch is done. Ryan drank the tea in the cup in one gulp and stood up. The Granger family had walked so far in the forest in the morning, and they were already hungry. By the way, Ryan, what is a house elf? I heard you tell it before in Diagon Alley. Hermione asked curiously after eating some steak to fill her stomach. I don't think you want to know. Ryan cut a piece of steak and put it in his mouth. The steak grilled with magic is always cooked at the right temperature, making it tender and juicy in your mouth. How do you know if I want to know or not if you don't tell me? Hearing what Ryan said, Hermione became even more curious. When she returned from Diagon Alley that day, she looked through all the books but could not find any news about house elves. So the little girl began to have crazy fantasies in her little mind about house elves being a secret army in the magical world, or something similar to the existence of nuclear weapons. Okay, since you want to know so much. Ryan showed a mysterious smile. Mr. and Mrs. Granger also slowed down their eating speed. They were also very interested in this existence that was not recorded in the book. House elves are slaves tamed by wizards. They are transformed from elves or goblins into house elves who serve their masters wholeheartedly under the dual effects of wizards' transformation and magic spells. Without wages and holidays, they will even harm themselves because their masters do not assign tasks to them, because their bodies and minds have long become extremely humble under the transformation of wizards. They reject almost all clothes, because once the owner gives them clothes, it means that they have broken away from their status as house elves and become free elves from then on. When Ryan said this, he saw Hermione's face change from calm at first to anger, and now to joy. But Ryan said this very seriously, causing Hermione's little face to wrinkle immediately. House elves who are given clothes by their masters will almost always commit suicide after leaving their master's house, because in their understanding, a house elf who has been abandoned by his master is not worthy of living in this world. Ryan spoke in calm words that made people tremble with fear. For a moment, the Grangers and their family even forgot to eat and stared at Ryan blankly. People who live in a society that has long since abolished feudalism would never think that such an almost cruel form of slavery would exist in a magical society. This is so barbaric. Hermione said angrily, and then stabbed the fork hard into the stake, as if the stake was the wizards who enslaved the elves. I want to establish a relief society to help house elves. I want to help house elves break away from slavery. Hermione said angrily. The Grangers also agreed with Hermione's statement. Then how do you plan to solve their magic problems? You must know that not every wizard who has a house elf is willing to give the house elf clothes. Ryan's calm words quickly calmed down the hot-headed Hermione. Is there no other way besides giving clothes? Hermione said distressedly. Perhaps you can try to break this enslavement curse, but I think this may not work. After all, this is a curse that was invented by gathering the wisdom of all wizards. Ryan thought for a moment and continued to pour cold water on him. And besides that, how are you going to solve the servility that they have inherited for thousands of years and has been deeply rooted in their bones? Hermione. Ryan asked after eating the last piece of steak and wiping his mouth. Hermione, who was only 11 years old at this time, had never thought of this, and she was suddenly speechless. Hermione, when you are not sure of shining sunshine into their hearts, it is better not to let them see hope. If you have not seen hope, you will not despair of the current situation. The greater the hope, the deeper the despair. Ryan did not see Hermione's aggrieved face and continued. Ahem. Mr. Granger coughed twice to make Ryan calm down. After all, he was still here, so he shouldn't bully Hermione too much. Ryan smiled and nodded to Mr. Granger to show that he understood. Wait until you are gone to continue bullying. Mr. Granger smiled happily and said that there are not many good and sensible children like Ryan anymore. Hermione remained silent for the rest of lunch, still immersed in what Ryan had said. Mr. Granger was very enthusiastic about discussing with Ryan whether magic and science could be connected. The two of them burst into hearty laughter from time to time, which made Mrs. Granger even more dissatisfied. My precious daughter was still sad right now, but these two people didn't seem to notice it. Mrs. Granger now looked at Ryan with a hint of dissatisfaction, and it was even more so for Mr. Granger. However, the two of them were talking happily now and did not notice the coldness in Mrs. Granger's eyes at all. Even after lunch, Hermione still couldn't come out, which made Ryan start to worry a little. Okay, Hermione, it's useless for you to think too much now. After all, you are still a young wizard who has not enrolled in school. Even if you want to implement a policy in the Muggle world, it requires the proposal of parliamentarians and sufficient support. Voting can only take place. And it is even more necessary in the magic world. Power, prestige, and strength. Only with these three things can you have enough foundation to support what you want. Otherwise, no matter what you do, you will be a waste in the eyes of others. Paper. Ryan thought for a while and took out these comforting words from his little head. Don't think so much, why not set a small goal first, that is, get the second grade in the first grade final exam. Why can't I get first place in my grade? Hermione became even more angry. I am the first in the grade. Ryan said directly without any embarrassment. Chapter 18. Hermione looked at Ensign's shameless look in front of her and burst into laughter. Ryan, to be honest, I have never lost in studies since I was a child. How about a competition? Hermione raised her head and looked at Ryan and said. Ryan became interested, Ryan forward and looked at Hermione, and said softly, what about the bet? Book, I won. I can read the books in your study. Hermione narrowed her eyes slightly, looking like a little fox who had succeeded. What if I win? This is impossible, I have never lost before. You have to place your bets before you can gamble at the poker table, right? Hermione's eyebrows knitted together after hearing this. She really couldn't think of any bets she could make. Money? Not to mention how much money she could spend, just from the pile of treasures Ryan mentioned, she knew that Ryan was definitely not short of money. As for the rest, what else could she, an 11-year-old girl, have to offer? Are you confused? Ha ha ha. Ryan watched Hermione's little face scrunch up and laughed unceremoniously. Hermione looked at Ryan, who was laughing, got angry, and stepped hard on Ryan's right foot with her left foot. Ouch! Ryan's howl attracted the Grangers, who were visiting the botanical garden. After lunch, the Grangers went to the botanical garden for a visit. They were particularly interested in this plant that grew extremely large, was very delicious, and did not wither all year round. They even asked Ryan if they could bring it. "Bring some seeds back, Hermione," Mrs. Granger shouted accusingly. Hermione snorted, but still apologized obediently. After the Grangers visited the botanical garden again, Ryan ran close to Hermione and said quietly, "If you can't decide what the bet is, how about I help you think of one? You see, the bet you want is what you want. You want it, don't you?" Hermione nodded. That was true. "Then I have to choose a bet that I want, so that it seems fair." Ryan continued to persuade. Hermione thought for a moment and nodded, but she still added, "It can only be within my ability, and it cannot break the law, and it must be ethical." Ryan was stunned for a moment, and suddenly began to think about whether what he was thinking of was moral. Ryan, you can't really be thinking about anything bad, right?" Ryan came back to his senses and saw Hermione sitting far away, looking at him with disgust. "Why are you sitting so far away?" "I want to stay away from scum," Hermione said with disgust. "Scum, where are the scum?" Ryan continued to show his shamelessness. Hermione rolled her eyes, sighed and said, "Okay, Mr. Scumbag, now you can name the stakes you need. If I can get the first place in the exam, how about you kiss me?" Ryan said with a smirk on his face. "Hey, is this the London Police Department? There is a pervert who molested a little girl here. Please call the police quickly." "Yes, about half an hour's walk into the national park, there is a huge tree with an owl loft on it, which is very conspicuous." Hermione made a phone call gesture with her little hand, and then pretended to call the police. "Hermione, I have cast a spell to block electronic products here. All electronic products cannot be used here." Ryan reined back on the sofa and crossed his legs, like a second-rate man. "I don't think a kiss is illegal or against public morals, and it's within your power." Ryan raised his eyebrows at Hermione, full of provocation. How could Hermione bear the thought of someone provoking her in front of her, so she immediately agreed, "Okay, then let's make this bet." "Of course." Ryan smiled happily, like a little fox who stole the chicken. When Hermione saw Ryan smiling like this, she immediately realized that she seemed to have been tricked by Ryan. "Then think about what the stakes are." Why did you just agree?" Hermione's expression didn't change, she still had that arrogant look, but the little Hermione inside was beating the ground constantly. "But I'm still angry." Hermione thought unwillingly. "Ryan, come here, I still have some thoughts about the bet just now." Hermione hooked her fingers at Ryan and said with a smile. Young Ryan had no idea what kind of enemy he was facing, so he walked over without any precautions. Then Hermione stepped hard on her right foot. Ouch! This cry was far more miserable than the last one. "Hermione!" Mrs. Granger's voice came from the botanical garden. Then the figure of Mrs. Granger appeared in their sight. Ryan hugged his right foot and kept rubbing it, pretending to look pitiful. "Sorry, Ryan, you know, Hermione is our only child and may be a little spoiled. I will definitely teach her a lesson and let her know how to be a lady." Mrs. Granger ran over and helped Ryan rub his feet. After coming into contact with Ryan, she developed great sympathy for this wandering child who had been without a father or mother in his early years. Taking advantage of Mrs. Granger's opportunity to rub his feet, Ryan raised his eyebrows at Hermione and raised the corners of his mouth crazily. Seeing Ryan being so provocative, Hermione was so angry that she almost gritted her teeth. She clenched her fists tightly, wanting to rush up and fight Ryan. "Ahem, Auntie, it's actually not a big problem." As he said that, Ryan jumped off the sofa, then jumped twice on the ground and spun around in circles. "Mom, look, there's nothing wrong with him at all," Hermione said coquettishly, holding Mrs. Granger's left arm. But Mrs. Granger glared at her, causing Hermione to stare at Ryan with anger in her eyes. Ryan shrugged and shook his head. "Damn it, the great Miss Hermione has fallen into the hands of this bastard several times." The little Hermione was screaming. She wanted to rush up and punch Ryan hard twice, but Mrs. Granger stared at her with a smile, so she had to give up the idea. Ah, it's really magical. It's indeed magic. Mr. Granger walked out of the botanical garden, gnawing on a freshly picked pear in his hand. It's big, sweet, juicy, and really delicious. As he said that, Mr. Granger took another bite, and the juice splashed everywhere. After quickly finishing a pear, Mr. Granger wiped his hands on the towel that floated over and said, "It's such a magical place that I can't bear to leave. But I still want to say that it's almost time. We have to go. Thank you for your hospitality, Ryan. Lunch is really delicious." Granger and Ryan hugged. "Mom, let's go quickly," Hermione urged. She really didn't want to see Ryan's face now. Mrs. Granger was a little unhappy and said, "You haven't said goodbye to Ryan yet." Ryan looked at Hermione with a smile, and Hermione gritted her teeth and replied, "Goodbye, Ryan. See you at school, Hermione. Come on, I'll take you out. This forest is still very big." Hermione pulled Mrs. Granger and went out directly, but Ryan held on to Mr. Granger. While putting some shrinking red wine into Mr. Granger's pocket, Ryan said, "Uncle, these are the bottles of wine you valued just now. I cast a shrinking spell on them. They will be gone in about 5 hours. It will return to its original shape, remember to hide it well." Mr. Granger touched several hard objects in his pocket and smiled happily. "This kid, please go ahead and pretend that you didn't see what he did to bully Hermione today. Not bad, really good, Ryan, you will definitely achieve great things in the future." Mr. Granger patted Ryan on the shoulder. Ryan looked at Mr. Granger with a smile and said with a smile, "It's all thanks to Uncle. By the way, let's leave quickly, otherwise it will be bad if Aunt and Hermione see the problem." "Oh, yes, let's go." With that said, Mr. Granger pulled Ryan out of the tree hole. Looking at Mr. Granger's back, Ryan couldn't help but think, today we will cut down 5 cities, tomorrow we will cut down 10 cities. Sooner or later, Hermione will have to change her surname to Zell. "Dad, why are you coming out so late? Are you doing something with Ryan?" Hermione glanced at Ryan suspiciously, then turned to ask Mr. Granger. "Don't think too much, I just gave Ryan a few words of encouragement. Let's go, there's still a way to go, it's getting dark soon." After saying that, Mr. Granger took the lead and walked in the direction he came from. Half an hour's journey passed in a blink of an eye, and now Ryan and the Granger family were standing where they entered the forest. Ryan took out the shrunken car and placed it on the ground. Growing big quickly. The car grew bigger and bigger in the Granger's eyes until it was as big as before. "Ryan, goodbye, come to our house when you have time." Mr. Granger hugged Ryan. "Goodbye." Ryan said goodbye to the Grangers. Then as if he suddenly remembered something, Ryan said to Hermione, "Hermione, don't forget our bet." "What bet?" Mr. Granger asked curiously. "It's just to see who can do better in the final exam. It's a healthy competition." Ryan answered in an evasive manner. "Don't worry, I won't forget it. Just wait for me to read the book." Hermione replied confidently. Finally, the Granger family drove slowly out of the national park. After the car disappeared around the corner, Ryan turned to go home. "Hey, Hermione, you brought this to your door yourself," Ryan murmured to himself. After all, choosing to read would mean that Hermione would have to stay at Ryan's house for a long time. If the relationship cannot be strengthened after such a long time, Ryan thinks he can buy a piece of tofu and kill him. "I'm really confused as to whether or not I should let Hermione take first place in the exam." Chapter 19. September 1, 1991, the weather is very sunny today, and the gentle breeze makes people's hearts flutter. Ryan was packing his luggage. Although it was luggage, Ryan had a seamless stretch pocket, so it was no bigger than a pocket. "Pace, let's go. I'll wait for you at Hermione's house first." Ryan called towards Pace's bird's nest, then carefully checked the defensive array of the hut, and finally used apparition to the back garden of Hermione's house with satisfaction. After visiting Ryan's hut, Mrs. Granger was full of sympathy for this sensible and cute little wizard. So after considering that Ryan had no parents to send him to the station, Mrs. Granger sent an invitation to Ryan and wanted to send him and Hermione to the station together. Mr. Granger didn't object. In his opinion, it seemed like a good idea to let Hermione meet a friend in the wizarding world in advance. Although Hermione strongly opposed it, under the suppression of the Grangers, Hermione had to accept the reality that she was going to the station with Ryan. "This is really amazing. Magic is such a convenient thing. Mr. Granger exclaimed in surprise when he saw Ryan suddenly appear in his back garden. Good morning, Uncle. Although it's very convenient, I still have to say that it feels really terrible. It's like having a sponge stuffed into a water pipe, but the pipe is still spinning like crazy. Ryan shook his head counterclockwise, because his brain was spinning clockwise, and he wanted to see if the two rotations could cancel each other out. However, the fact is that Ryan was even more dizzy. Sorry, it seems I have to take a rest. Ryan sat down on the ground, panting continuously. Oh, my God, Ryan, are you okay? Mrs. Granger saw Ryan sitting on the ground and immediately poured a glass of water and ran over. Quick, come and take a sip of water. Ryan slowly drank up the water in the glass and let out a long sigh of relief. Thank you, Auntie, I feel better now. Hermione also looked over worriedly, but after seeing that Ryan had calmed down a lot, she looked elsewhere. Ryan, Professor McGonagall must have used this magic when she came to visit her home, but I don't think she had such serious side effects. Mr. Granger asked curiously. Ryan smiled bitterly and said, this kind of sequelae is actually easy to overcome. To put it bluntly, you just have to spit it out and get used to it. Mr. Granger's eyes were filled with the words "You're kidding me," which was barely written on his face. Don't wizards think of ways to improve it? Mr. Granger helped Ryan. He poured another glass of water and said, well, in their opinion, maybe being conservative is right. After all, it's not bad if you don't do it. And to be honest, this magic is really advanced, and it's not easy to master it, let alone improve it. Ryan drank all the water in one breath, then stood up and moved around. But, wouldn't this mean that the magical world is like a pool of stagnant water? I can't think of any motivation in such a society. Hermione asked with her arms crossed and a raised brow. As you said, it is indeed like a pool of stagnant water. Today's magic can already allow wizards to live a good life, and they have lost their enterprising spirit. Hermione, I think we should go. Mr. Granger interrupted Hermione and pointed to the clock on the wall. Humph. Hermione snorted at Ryan, then picked up her suitcase and walked towards the car. Ryan felt strange. He remembered that he gave Hermione a seamless stretch bag. Although the magic on the bag is not permanent, it will take at least half a year before it collapses. Hermione, where's the seamless stretch bag I gave you? It'll be easier to use that one. Ryan ran to Hermione and took the slightly heavy box from her hand. Hermione rolled her eyes at Ryan and said angrily, thanks to someone, my father actually thought of using a seamless stretch pocket to hide wine. Unfortunately, someone didn't tell me that my father's shrunken items cannot be put into the seamless pocket. Stretch the bag, otherwise the spell will be destabilized and the whole bag will break. Cough cough cough. Ryan was completely stunned. He kept telling Mr. Granger to find a safe place. Unexpectedly, he found the traceless stretch pocket. Mr. Granger heard Hermione's words, but did not react at all. The old god sat comfortably in the driver's seat of the car, holding the steering wheel with both hands and staring blankly ahead. After the discovery of the 3 bottles of wine, all of Mr. Granger's wine was confiscated, and alcohol is now rationed every day. After stuffing Hermione's suitcase into their own seamless stretch bags, Ryan and Hermione made their way to the back row of the car. After a while, Mrs. Granger also sat in the passenger seat. She looked like she had some makeup on, some perfume on her body, and her clothes seemed to be newly bought. After all, this is the first time little Hermione has left home to go to a boarding school, and it is also a magic school, so there must be some sense of ceremony. Mrs. Granger said. Hermione closed her eyes completely and let him talk. Ryan suddenly realized that Hermione was unexpectedly cute at this moment, which made him couldn't help but reach out and pinch Hermione's little face. Pa! Hermione quickly knocked away the hand that was stroking her face, and then glared at Ryan, but her little face turned even redder. Hermione has been a bit of an outcast since primary school because she always held a book. After the magic riot, some strange phenomena always appeared around her, which completely isolated Hermione, who was originally unsociable. Ryan is the first same kind she has come into contact with, and this same kind looks even worse than her. People's joys and sorrows are different, but as long as my life is better than yours, maybe this can make me a little happy. After learning what the Death Eaters stood for, Hermione also thought about staying away from Ryan. But then she realized that a Muggle-born Ryan could never become a Death Eater, and she also wanted to learn something from Ryan. So she started corresponding with Ryan, and slowly she also learned that Ryan, who did not seem like a good person regardless of his life experience or experiences, was actually quite good. Hermione, Hermione! Ryan shouted into Hermione's ear. He could even clearly see the fuzz on Hermione's ears. Ouch! Ryan quickly fell onto the seat, clutching his stomach. It turned out that Hermione had punched Ryan subconsciously. Sorry, Ryan, who asked you to get so close? It's not a gentleman's behavior to approach a lady so casually. Hermione said with her head held high. A gentleman at this time is just a gentleman, and has no intention of becoming a gentleman in future generations. Ryan kept gasping for air. Even though Hermione was weak, her hand was still very strong. Hermione, are you bullying Ryan again? As a sister, why can't you give in to him? Mrs. Granger's voice came from the front row. Hermione was born on September 19, 1979, and Ryan was born on July 1, 1980, so Hermione is actually Ryan's sister. Mom, you saw everything just now. It was Ryan who came over by himself. Then you shouldn't have done anything. Humph. Hermione puffed up her cheeks angrily, looking extremely cute. The Grangers had long known that Ryan had different feelings for Hermione. Who in the right mind would send 3 or 4 letters a day after meeting her once? They also knew that Hermione was very ambitious and would definitely not want to accept a Muggle as her husband. Looking at Ryan again, at least this month has been pretty good, and Ryan's magic level is also very high. After arriving at Hogwarts, Hermione's campus life would at least be a little better with Ryan's presence. Death Eaters, House Elves, Wizard Wars, they also learned a lot about the magical world from the book History of Magic in this month. The more they got to know them, the more panicked they became. This seemed to be an old-fashioned and conservative social system, and even duels in the Middle Ages existed openly. Since Ryan is interested in Hermione now, and Hermione has shown no resentment, so what if her parents bring her together? It's better than not knowing that one day, Hermione will bring back a girl who doesn't understand Muggle life at all. It would be better if the wizard came back. Besides, since Ryan is now alone without a father or mother, it is not impossible for him to change his surname to Granger. After thinking about it, Mrs. Granger looked in the rearview mirror at Hermione, who was still angry in the back seat, and Ryan, who was holding his stomach, and she became more and more satisfied. Hermione won't be bullied after getting married. Is there any better candidate for a son-in-law? This made Mrs. Granger feel more and more pleased with Ryan the more she looked at him. Mr. Granger was concentrating on driving his car, and from time to time he felt distressed about the 3 bottles of fine wine that had been confiscated. Time slipped quietly between the 4 people in silence, and the car quickly arrived at King's Cross Station. By the way, does King's Cross Station have platform 9 3/4? Mr. Granger said, holding 2 tickets in his hand and flicking them a little. Perhaps a Muggle shielding spell was used to make people subconsciously ignore it. Ryan continued to rub his belly, which made Mrs. Granger worried. When Hermione saw it, she rolled her eyes and said, "It's only 9:40 now, and the train doesn't leave until 11, so there's still enough time. Maybe we can find a good seat in the car," Ryan suggested. "Hey!" Hermione made a mocking noise that had no meaning. "This is a good suggestion. You can't wait until the train is about to leave before looking for a seat." Mrs. Granger agreed with the proposal, and she also wanted to see what the magic train was like. "Let's go, kids," Mr. Granger said, giving Hermione a slight push from behind. Chapter 20. The 4 of them entered the station and found the corresponding platform according to the address on the ticket. "So what's next? How do we get to platform 9 3/4? Mr. Granger scratched his head and asked in confusion. 9 3/4 is between 9 and 10, so I guess the entrance should be on a pillar between platform 9 and platform 10. Hermione thought as she used her superhuman talent. Ryan tapped his finger in the void and discovered a magic wave on the wall. "Come with me, I think I have found the entrance." Ryan waved to the Granger family, and then took the lead to move forward. The Grangers looked at each other and followed suit. Hermione stamped her feet, a little angry. "Next time I'll find out before you do," Hermione muttered. "Hermione, come here quickly, what are you doing there?" Mrs. Granger shouted. Hermione heard Mrs. Granger's words and looked up. The Grangers and Ryan had already arrived at a pillar between platform 9 and platform 10. Hermione knew that this was the entrance to platform 9 3/4, and ran over quickly regardless of her competitiveness. Is this the entrance to the platform? Isn't there anything special? Hermione trotted to the wall, patted the solid stone wall, and said curiously. This wall is set up with detection magic. You can only enter by running all the way. After saying that, Ryan paused, then looked at Hermione and continued, in addition, the wall to enter is not here, but on the other side. Humph. Hermione kicked Ryan and walked to the other side. Hermione's kick didn't use any force at all, and Ryan didn't feel any pain at all, so he followed Hermione to the other side. Mrs. Granger saw this scene and nodded with satisfaction. Mr. Granger originally wanted to say something, but after receiving a glare from Mrs. Granger, he shut up. Hermione came to the wall on the other side and reached out to touch it. It was as hard as an ordinary wall. You have to trot to get in. Ryan reminded, standing behind Hermione. Why didn't you run in? Hermione glanced at Ryan, somewhat disbelieving him. Ryan shrugged, and then ran into the wall under the surprised eyes of the Grangers and Hermione. He entered the wall. Although Mrs. Granger knew that this was the entrance to the station, she couldn't help but say in surprise as she watched a person disappear under her eyes. Mom, let's go in too. Hermione said, stretching out her little hand. The three of them ran into the platform holding hands. Soon, Ryan and the Granger family met at platform 9 3/4. The four of them marveled at the mystery and charm of magic. But the four of them soon caught the attention of the stationed Aurors because they acted too much like Muggles who had entered the station by mistake. Unlucky, why did a Muggle come in today? The Auror in the long trench coat muttered, then took out his wand and walked towards the four of them. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you have come to a world that does not belong to you. Now please forget them and live a life that belongs to you. The Auror said as he raised his wand and wanted to cast the forgetting spell. Sorry, sir, we are new little wizards, and this is our admission notice. Hermione nervously took out her admission notice. This was the first time in the little girl's life that someone had a wand pointed at her, and the person was a police officer in the magical world. The Auror took the letter in Hermione's hand, checked it carefully, and then returned the admission notice to Hermione with confusion, and said, So, where is your luggage? You will be taught without books. They were kicked out of the classroom. Pocket with the invisible stretch charm, sir, Ryan said. The Auror looked at the pocket sewn with dragon skin on Ryan's waist, nodded clearly, and said, Sorry, this was my mistake. I wish you a pleasant journey. After saying that, he turned back to the shade where he had just been sitting. It really scared me to death. I thought that gentleman was going to cast a spell on us. Mrs. Granger touched her chest and said with some uneasiness. It should be a forgetting spell. This kind of spell can delete or even modify a person's memory. Ryan said. This. Mr. Granger was speechless. He did not expect that there was such inhuman magic in the wizarding world. Yes, in Mr. Granger's opinion, this kind of magic was inhuman. Isn't there anyone in the wizarding world who uses this kind of magic for evil? Why don't they ban these magics? Mr. Granger asked curiously. Who knows? Ryan looked around and replied nonchalantly. A group of 4 people just talked casually to each other while visiting this small magical train station on the platform. During the visit, the group met many people who were doing the same thing. After meeting each other and smiling, everyone knew that the other person was from the Muggle world. Okay, I think it's time for you to find a good seat. I've seen many children already getting on the train. Mrs. Granger was obviously a little anxious about this matter, and they hadn't seen it on the train yet. The train is divided into small compartments, with corridors on the left and compartments on the right. Each compartment can seat 6 people, and luggage can be stored overhead and under the seats. Finding a booth in the middle, Ryan and the Granger family sat in it. It seems to be no different from an ordinary train, and I see steam is coming out of the front of this train. Isn't this really an antique from the last century? Mr. Granger did not sit down, but felt around. Mrs. Granger was telling Hermione something. Hermione seemed to know that she was about to be separated from her parents, and looked a little depressed. Ryan looked out the window, and only at this moment did he feel a little lonely. Suddenly, Ryan felt someone tapping his shoulder and turned around. It turned out to be Mr. Granger. Mr. Granger waved and motioned for Ryan to follow him out. Ryan was a little confused, but he still followed Mr. Granger out. Ryan, I know that you are very powerful in magic, and I also know that you may have some interest in Hermione. Once outside, Mr. Granger hit Ryan with a straight shot. Even, you may have killed someone. For a moment, Ryan wanted to pull out his wand and give Mr. Granger a forgetting spell to modify his memory. But Mr. Granger didn't notice. He continued, I can ignore all of this, but I want to ask you for something. Mr. Granger raised his head and stared into Ryan's eyes seriously. Ryan nodded, he probably guessed what it was. Ryan, please help Hermione more when she is at Hogwarts. This is the first time she has left home to go to a boarding school, let alone a wizarding school. Even if it is my request. Mr. Granger's words were full of sincerity, which moved Ryan a little. His father in his previous life was a scumbag, and he had never seen his parents in this life. Ryan nodded heavily. When Mr. Granger saw that Ryan agreed, he smiled with satisfaction and patted Ryan on the shoulder to indicate that he should return to the cubicle. Dad, what did you and Ryan do when you went out? It's so mysterious. Hermione asked curiously when she saw Mr. Granger and Ryan entering the carriage. The little girl was a little impatient after being told by Mrs. Granger. She was now full of yearning for the magical world. Nothing, just discussing this train, don't you think so, Ryan? Mr. Granger said with a smile, and glanced at Ryan. Yes. Ryan was a little absent-minded, and he remembered the scene in his last life when his father killed his mother in front of his eyes. This is a nightmare that always appears in Ryan's mind at night. Hearing Ryan's perfunctory words, Hermione curled her lips and didn't care. She just thought that Ryan was alone, but she was accompanied by her parents, feeling a little depressed. At about 10:30, the four people walked out of the train again. Ryan took out his luggage and put it in the carriage to prevent it from being snatched away while he was away. Hermione, I made some snacks and put them in your box. Remember to eat them at noon. There are also orange juice and apple juice, which are your favorites. When you get to school, remember to study hard. If someone bullies you, go to them. Teachers. Mrs. Granger was a little reluctant, her eyes a little red. Mr. Granger kept patting Mrs. Granger on the shoulder, trying to comfort her. Hermione was also a little depressed at this time, so she rushed forward and gave Mrs. Granger a big hug. Mr. Granger winked at Ryan, who nodded. This is an agreement between them. Soon, Mr. and Mrs. Granger went back through the wall. Ryan heard a burst of sobbing from beside him and turned his head to see Hermione quietly wiping away her tears. What are you looking at? I'm not crying, it's just sand in my eyes. Hermione raised her eyebrows and shouted sharply when she saw Ryan looking over. Then he stamped his feet, turned around and ran into the train. Ryan smiled and followed Hermione into the train. When they arrived at the carriage, Pace had flown over by himself and was standing on Ryan's luggage. When Pace saw Ryan coming in, he jumped from the luggage to the seat, and then put his head in front of Ryan's hand, wanting him to touch it. Ryan raised his hand, and Pace put his head into Ryan's hand. Hermione looked a little hot and reached out to touch Pace, but Pace pecked her hard. Pace, how could you do this? Ryan scolded Pace, then picked him up and sent him to Hermione. Ignoring Pace's disdainful gaze, Ryan took out a book from his pocket and started reading. Hermione also took out a book from her suitcase and started reading. The carriage fell into silence for a while.